The story opens on a nightmare vision of monsters tearing through a burning, chaotic battlefield. Amidst the slaughter, a few awakened humans known as players step forward to fight back. Among them is Hyunok Lee, the Steel Emperor, unleashing glowing swords against a massive dragon. He prepares a devastating attack, but the glorious vision suddenly shatters into pieces. Reality hits as Hyunok hangs upside down in the dirt while an instructor screams. His entire platoon lies prone on the ground, leaving him in utter, wide-eyed shock. He wonders how the last savior of humanity ended up back at a military shooting range. An officer furiously reprimands the recruits for losing spent casings, while Hyunok channels blue energy. He quietly electrifies a stray bullet casing and slips it straight into his mouth. The drill instructor screams in rage, forcing the exhausted soldiers to shout their compliance. Hyunok stares at his status window, realizing his metal control limit is a pathetic 300 grams. He tells himself anyone would go mad getting dragged back into the army after dying in the future. In his memory of the future, a massive explosion levels the city. Bodies swing from the ruined structures as a chilling laugh echoes through the smoke. Lying in his own blood, Hyunok realizes players exterminated humanity, not monsters. A cloaked figure in a plague mask stands over the fallen Steel Emperor. A hooded man with glowing red eyes mocks the dying F-class player. These traitors declared themselves divine beings who judged humanity. Hyunok curses the villains, bitterly wishing he had learned how to grow strong earlier. The bearded man asks if he is frustrated, telling him to let it go. He coldly dismisses the fallen hero's desperate regrets. Tears of absolute despair stream down Hyunok's blood-splattered face. The traitor declares that all incompetent F-class losers were destined for this exact fate. The smirking blonde man watches the brutal execution unfold. A towering figure grips a vine-covered spike, preparing to deliver the final bloody blow. Suddenly, dark roots force their way down Hyunok's throat, drowning his agonizing screams. He violently screams Gordon Precy's name as his life is snuffed out. Now, Hyunok nervously gulps in his camouflage uniform, hanging completely upside down. A drill sergeant screams at the squad doing push-ups on a concrete staircase. Hyunok stares at his system window, deeply distressed that his abilities have completely reset. As soldiers spell slogans with their bodies in the dirt, a recruit flashes a thumbs up. Later, the massive formation of troops gathers on the paved grounds. The squad commander orders them inside while the hungry men discuss dinner. Hyunok looks around in sheer disbelief, dreading the terrible military gruel. Nearby, a stray cat hisses aggressively at the scattered trash bags. A squad leader stops Corporal Hyunok Lee, announcing an extra task before they eat. An exhausted soldier immediately protests that they just returned from training. The leader just smiles coldly, mocking the very idea that they consider that training. Sergeant Senguk, suddenly remembers exactly who he is dealing with. He angrily demands that an F-class loser like Hyunok do the extra work instead of the combat squad. Mocks the new corporal, asking if he expects an easy time just because of his rank. Hyunok stares silently forward, his cold eyes instantly provoking the sergeant into a rage. Summons a glowing magic circle, threatening to drop ranks and beat into a pulp. He asks if Hyunok really wants to go man-to-man with a superior D-class. But instead of fighting, Hyunok smirks and loudly agrees to do the job after they eat. The sergeant freezes in shock as Hyunok points out that the other companies are watching. He slyly adds that such hazing rumors could ruin O's future reputation in the guilds. Realizing he is trapped, awkwardly accepts the compromise. He clears his throat in embarrassment and orders the rest of the soldiers inside. Hyunok tells Private Junmo Park to take the squad to the mess hall without him. Watching him leave, wonders why the usually pathetic Hyunok is acting so differently. Hyunok walks quietly past the barbed wire fences. Once out of sight, he clenches his jaw and lets out a heavy sigh of relief. He tells himself that swallowing his pride is nothing compared to what the traitor Gordon Precy did. He knows he must avoid trouble, keeping his ability to level up a complete secret. Meanwhile, panic breaks out in the mess hall as the soldiers realize every single spoon is missing. Hyunok shoves one of the stolen spoons into his mouth and forces himself to swallow. He gags at the disgusting taste of raw steel. As his controllable metal weight increases, he calculates he can now handle exactly one bayonet, frustrated that empty casings and spoons barely weigh a gram. Hyunok realizes his progress is agonizingly slow. Staring out at the distant tower, he calculates he has just 4 days to prepare to fight a boss monster at level 1. Securing his blade, he summons a swirling blue aura and vows to show his enemies the true power of an expert. 3 days later, under the cover of night, Hyunok and Private Junmo Park stand guard at the remote outpost. Glancing over, Junmo nervously points out that his corporal seems to have changed recently. When Hyunok asks if that makes him uncomfortable, the private stammers that he meant he has changed for the better. Ignoring the flattery, Hyunok checks his metal capacity, which now exceeds a kilogram, and asks Junmo if he trusts him. Before the private can fully answer, Hyunok violently racks his rifle, sending a sharp clack through the silent woods. Just beyond the perimeter, grotesque, drooling monsters melt out of the shadows. The horned horrors crawl silently along the cliffside, stalking toward the unsuspecting, sleeping barracks below. Suddenly, a piercing blue blade impales the lead beast, hurling it backward with a sickening crunch. Hyunok erupts from the trees, wielding a whip of cracking blue energy that rips through the staggered pack. Smiling wildly amidst the carnage, he tells the monsters he has been waiting 3 days for them. A pale, sword-wielding creature crouches to retaliate, forcing Hyunuk to admit his current level 1 body is still frustratingly weak. Reaching into the swirling energy, he glares at the drooling beast and reflects on this second chance at life. As the monster dives at him with a screeching threat, Hyunuk launches a blinding energy strike. He cleaves the creature with a glowing blade, sending a shockwave into the trees as they violently clash. His electrified dagger finds its mark just as a new snarling horde emerges and he spots a glowing red crystal. Channeling his energy, he shoves the raw crystal into his mouth, leaving the goblin horde utterly confused. He gags at the foul taste of mana steel, disgusting the goblins. But a system window confirms his capacity has increased. Checking his interface, he grins ominously at the portal horde, realizing that devouring their loot guarantees an easy life. With his fist crackling with blue lightning, he eagerly declares that the feast has begun. Moments earlier at the Namsan guard post, Hyunuk cocks his rifle and tells Junmo he senses moving metal. When the terrified private suggests warning command, Hyunuk dismisses the idea, knowing nobody believes an F-class player. As Junmo panics, Hyunuk grabs his shoulder and volunteers to investigate the dark forest alone. Ordering Junmo to stay silent, Hyunuk smiles darkly, knowing the army cannot discover his secret harvest. A glowing blue portal rips open in the night, unleashing a charging horde of pale, clawed goblins. Knowing the military would confiscate his loot, Hyunuk flashes a manic grin and prepares to feast alone. He plunges into the dark forest, his metal manipulation glowing as he brutally strikes the swarming monsters. Leaving a trail of blue light, he effortlessly unleashes a massive wave of energy across the battlefield. A purple-skinned beast drops from the shadows, but he instantly cleaves through it, spraying green gore. High in the branches, a giant ape-like creature clenches its fists, watching its minions rush toward the glowing slaughter. Standing amidst the bloody carnage, Hyunuk sadistically orders the dying beast to keep screaming. Suddenly, a jagged purple blade drops toward his blind spot, forcing him to swiftly raise his arm. He blocks the ambush, his blue energy violently clashing against the monstrous attacker in a blinding burst. Spinning his weapon, he intercepts the lunging creature with a brutal slash. He channels a swirling vortex of energy, ripping through the screaming purple beast. Skidding to a halt, he watches the monster spew green liquid from its jaws. Deciding to maximize the terror, Hyunuk brutally stomps his boot down on the creature's head. Having been betrayed and murdered in his past life, he flies into a murderous rage at the sneak attack. The sheer malice radiating from him breaks the surviving goblins, and he calmly asks if it is time for the main dish. He notices a glowing crystal resting among the green gore, ready to claim his secret harvest. Frustrated by relying only on his eyes, Hyunuk scans the dark forest, searching for his hidden enemy. A creature bares its fangs in the shadows, revealing itself as a sneaky boss monster. A hooded goblin shaman emerges from the foliage, clutching a skull staff and smirking menacingly. Hyunuk bends to retrieve a red crystal, deliberately leaving himself wide open, and the creature clenches its claw in response. He knows the boss will not let this slide, and a horde of creatures immediately pours through a portal. Realizing this enemy is far from mindless, Hyunuk watches the shaman cast a spell with a glowing runic orb. He grins with dark anticipation, eager for his prey to fully expose itself. The shadowy figure violently smashes a runic object and Hyunuk crouches with his rifle to track the movement. The ground violently rumbles as more figures cascade from the jagged rocks. Miles away at Dongbak High School, a panicked soldier asks Sergeant Sangguk if he felt the tremor. The sergeant furiously threatens the private for waking him over something so meaningless. Back in the forest, a swarm of purple-skinned monsters charges blindly through the mist. Spiky structures erupt from the earth as the hooded shaman shatters the ground. The creature snarls ferociously, certain that it has finally found its target. Unleashing a torrent of swirling blue energy, Hyunuk darts forward, cutting through the darkness like a shark. Bathed in ethereal light, he violently collides with the monstrous figure. The shaman shatters a tree, and Hyunuk curses as his perfect shot misses. The monster snarls, prompting the soldier to lunge forward as he realizes it was a fake-out. The hooded figure unleashes a swirling blue vortex, leaving Hyunuk shocked amidst the smoke. The beast readies an electrified blade before raising its glowing staff. Gritting its teeth with a bleeding hand, the shaman listens to Hyunuk mock its desperate defense. The creature growls, green blood dripping from its injured arm. Hyunuk furiously reminds the beast how its kind used to hunt him in groups. He glares intensely, standing over the injured boss as the rest of the pack watches. The pale horde charges forward, and a system warning about critically low mana makes Hyunuk sweat. Clicking his rifle to burst fire, he watches the shaman lift its skull staff. Hyunuk screams that he will eat the beast before the military can jail him. The monster's glowing eye narrows, but suddenly Junmo's voice calls out in the dark woods. Keeping his rifle aimed at the horde, Hyunuk recognizes the private's voice in absolute shock. As Junmo wanders blindly through the trees, the shaman mutters an alien incantation. The goblin horde leaps across the jagged rocks, diving headfirst with drawn blades. Junmo screams as he tumbles through the dark, forcing Hyunuk to grit his teeth. A monster swings a serrated weapon at the terrified private, and Hyunuk screams at him to get down. Gunfire rips through the dark as Hyunuk unloads his rifle into the charging monsters. He dodges their frantic strikes and violently shoots a goblin in the face. Slipping past a massive brute, he keeps aiming into the rainy night until the screeching stops. Lowering his weapon, he observes the dark landscape, securing the area around the unconscious private. He clicks his tongue in frustration, realizing the cunning shaman has ordered its surviving horde to retreat. Suddenly, his radio crackles with panicked voices confirming that a monster gate has spawned inside the base. As soldiers secure the perimeter and tend to the wounded, Hyunok listens to the chaotic reports. He clenches his device tightly as command orders guard Post 5 to defend their assigned positions. He knows that First Lieutenant Uniseo, a powerful paladin, is already mobilizing to intercept them. He remembers how in his past life she effortlessly slaughtered the onslaught and let the military confiscate the dungeon's loot. He silently vows to claim the legendary adamantium first, knowing it is the ultimate metal that once made him the Steel Emperor. He knows missing this chance means waiting 4 years. A delay like that would just repeat the brutal failures of his past life. Hyunok decides he must claim the adamantium before the rapid deployment force arrives. Crouching in the dark forest, he tells Private Junmo Park the goblins need a living sacrifice. Junmo stares in shock at a fallen creature nearby. Hyunok dismisses the idea that the monsters would hunt in the dense downtown area. He realizes their pack-hunting habits require a more isolated target. Suddenly, a terrified scream echoes over the radio from Guard Post 6. Gunfire erupts under a bright flare in the night sky. A confident grin spreads across Hyunok's face. He grabs his radio and announces that Guard Post 5 is moving to intercept. He officially declares their intent to provide support. Over the comms, Sergeant Sangwukak furiously orders the useless F-class players to stay put. Hyunok simply clicks the radio off. A panicked Junmo warns him that abandoning their post guarantees a court-martial. Hyunok explains that the long-range players at Post 6 will be slaughtered up close. Junmo desperately asks what difference one F-class soldier can make. Pointing forward, Hyunok casually states that he is not going alone. Junmo freezes, his jaw dropping in absolute horror. Elsewhere, pale monsters violently hurl themselves at the barbed wire of Guard Post 6. Behind a glowing green barrier, 2 bloodied soldiers desperately wait for reinforcements. They huddle near ancient glowing structures as the chaotic assault abruptly stops. One soldier looks up, deeply unnerved by the sudden silence. Without warning, a hooded goblin shaman steps forward and shatters their energy barrier. Inside the post, the guards panic as debris crashes down around them. They realize the boss monster plans to capture them once the post is destroyed. Terrified, one soldier breaks down crying while another readies his rifle, deciding a quick death is better. The monstrous goblin shaman emerges from the shadows, raising its gnarled weapon to finish them. Suddenly, Hyunok's voice crackles over the radio, ordering Private Junmo Park to draw his crossbow. Confused by the order to use a fire skill, Junmo knows they need a whole squad to fight back. Hyunok fires a bright flare to the dark sky, illuminating the battlefield. Pinning down a goblin, Hyunok points forward and declares he will control the trigger himself. Junmo stares in absolute shock as his weapon's trigger clicks back completely on its own. A flaming arrow launches through the air, piercing the shaman right in the chest. The monster is instantly engulfed in a massive fiery explosion. Hyunok smirks, pleased that manipulating the metal trigger saves his mana while boosting the attack's power. Inside the bunker, the bloodied guards watch the sudden rescue in disbelief. However, the shaman survives the blast, glaring through the smoke before hurling a violent barrage of rocks that smashes into Hyunok's position. Unfazed by the attack, Hyunok barks through the smoke, commanding the terrified Junmo to reload and aim at the light. The hooded goblin shaman commands its monstrous forces to rise. However, fiery explosions immediately erupt across the forest, tearing the creatures apart. Crouching in the bushes, Junmo worries about getting killed before he spots the distant inferno. He realizes Hyunok is not just creating a distraction, but single-handedly wiping out the entire gate. Suddenly, a snarling goblin ambushes Junmo from behind, raising a massive cleaver. As Junmo screams for help, a glowing spear suddenly impales the beast. A bright light shines from Junmo's chest as Hyunok fires a projectile from his finger. The fiery blast strikes the creature dead center, engulfing it in a massive explosion. Pointing forward, Hyunok orders the private to regroup at his position. More fiery detonations rip through the trees, completely wiping out the remaining goblin squad. Across the battlefield, the enraged shaman glares through the dark and bares its fangs. Hyunok checks a glowing interface, receiving a critical warning that his mana is rapidly depleting. Gritting his teeth, he realizes the boss monster is intentionally waiting for his energy to run out. Suddenly, Junmo comes skidding down the rocky slope in an absolute panic. Begging for his life, the terrified private apologizes to his corporal for failing his orders. Hyunok immediately gathers swirling blue energy in his hand to strike, but before he can unleash it, a massive claw grabs Junmo from behind, making him scream in horror. As the creature roars, Hyunok grits his teeth. He calls out to Junmo and drops his glowing knife. Sighing that the private is forcing his hand, he faces the 2 monsters. He points a gloved finger and smirks, declaring a checkmate. With a flick of his finger, a metallic mechanism activates. Junmo fires his rifle wildly as a sharp-clawed hand reaches out from the shadows. The fanged beast violently spews green fluid and slams forward. The private falls back screaming, and Hyunok shouts his name. Junmo answers from the ground, prompting Hyunok to smile maniacally and wish the monsters bon appetit. He launches a glowing kick at a monster as its massive claw emerges. He strikes a creature squarely in the back, shocked to feel leather armor. Questioning why the armor only covers its back, he dashes away from a swirling blast. He spots the goblin shaman and realizes the gate is shifting, making Junmo shout in distress. A massive hand reaches from a glowing portal as the purple-skinned monster lunges. The hooded shaman emerges from the darkness, and Hyunuk stares in wide-eyed shock. The shaman's spiked necklace glows as Hyunuk's mana hits 4%, making him grimace. Glowing blue chains strike him in the dark. Down to 2%, he lands a heavy strike on the creature. Surging with raw blue energy, the monstrous being screams that it wants to eat. Firing a final energy beam, Hyunuk strikes the creature down. As his mana hits 0, he hunches over in exhaustion, realizing his past body desperately needs training. Suddenly, a massive flare illuminates the night sky as soldiers flood the forest behind a blinding holy light. First Lieutenant Yoon Haseo has finally arrived. Ignoring the reinforcements, Hyunuk frantically digs into the dead monster and extracts a glowing, green dripping crystal. Soldiers immediately surround him with raised rifles as he raises his hands in surrender. When they demand his identity, the exhausted soldier weakly introduces himself as Corporal Hyunuk Lee. Medics rush him onto a stretcher just as Yuna inspects the still-active portal. Examining the dead creatures, she realizes the precise identical wounds are clearly the work of a single person. As Hyunuk is carried away on a stretcher, he suddenly bursts into a maniacal laugh. A nearby soldier stares in confusion at his laugh, but Hyunuk's glowing eyes show he is focused on something else entirely. While Yuna learns of the fleeing goblins, she charges forward to execute them in the dark forest. Clenching his fist, he smiles menacingly as he feels his strength returning. Across the base, female soldiers gossip excitedly about an F-class corporal wiping out goblins with a single bayonet. The wild rumors make soldiers spit their drinks in shock, but Sergeant Sang-guk flatly refuses to believe them. When a soldier insists the stories are true, Sang-guk angrily snaps at the younger man to lower his voice. The sergeant maliciously grabs a trembling Private Anil Park by the neck, mocking his tired saluting arm. He turns to Private Won-sok Lee, sarcastically asking if this supposed new ace could lead rookies through a gate raid. Knowing that an arrogant F-class threatens military discipline, Sang-guk flashes a wide, cruel grin as he plots his next move. Meanwhile, inside the battalion commander's office, Hyunuk and the others salute their superior. Sweating nervously, Hyunuk wonders why the commander will not just let the incident slide. Lieutenant Yoon Haseo watches silently as Lieutenant Colonel Gang So Kim glares at the young corporal. Kim demands to know if Hyunuk truly stopped the first wave alone, forcing Hyunuk to desperately plan for a mere reprimand. When Hyunuk claims he simply responded to the outbreak, the scarred commander growls that a normal F-class would have been torn to pieces. Gulping under the intense pressure, Hyunuk steels his nerves and boldly shouts that he feels completely deceived. The locker room erupts in shock at his audacity. Gang Seok calmly asks why the young private feels betrayed. Hyunuk reminds the commander of his own constant teachings. He recites the manual's promise that even low-ranking players can defeat trolls. Based on those lessons, he argues that an F-class handling goblins is entirely possible. He defends his disobedience, insisting it was the only way to save Guard Post 6. Knowing his logic is sound, Hyunuk secretly prepares to manipulate the commander's emotions. He passionately shouts the battalion's motto to fight their best and prepare for the worst. He declares that he risked his life solely out of respect for Gangsuk's true, soldierly spirit. He explains how those beliefs helped him endure endless contempt as an F-class. Denying his success now would mean denying his entire military service. Hyunuk knows Gangsuk nearly died fighting orcs when the gates first opened. Despite his injuries, the commander returned without hesitation to help found the AMT. Smiling inwardly, Hyunuk bets this true soldier will never court-martial him now. Gunzak suddenly steps forward and tightly grips Hyunuk's arm. The commander asks if this is truly what Hyunuk believes. Radiating intense energy, Gangsuk loudly declares that Hyunuk should become a non-commissioned officer. As a system window grants Hyunuk the steel physique skill, Gangsuk warmly congratulates him. Hyunuk freezes in confusion while Lieutenant Yoon Haseo sighs heavily. The scarred commander gives a firm, approving nod. Sweating and terrified, Hyunuk realizes his impassioned bluff just trapped him in the military. Later, at the battalion fitness center, Hyunuk struggles under a clanging barbell, deeply frustrated. He realizes that dodging a court-martial just trapped him in an even bigger mess. He sits dejectedly on a bench while nearby soldiers stare. They whisper in shock, unable to believe an F-class hunter actually became a non-commissioned officer. Hyunuk vows to lay low while platoon leader Lee delays the official promotion. His peace is immediately shattered when Private Won-sok Lee interrupts his workout. Smirking smugly, Won-sok mocks the famous new celebrity for lifting such light weights. He loudly declares that Hyunuk is a complete embarrassment to their unit. As Won-sok's cronies burst into mocking laughter, Hyunuk realizes Sergeant Sang-guk is testing him. Remembering the brutal bullying from his past life, he knows ignoring them will only make things worse. Exasperated, Hyunuk abandons his promise to stay quiet and decides to blow off some steam. He coldly challenges the shocked private to a round of sparring. Word spreads instantly, and a massive crowd gathers around the training cage to watch the F-class fight the unit's rising ace. Inside the octagon, Hyunuk silently cracks his knuckles. Won-sok sticks his tongue out, mockingly asking to see what he can learn from their amazing corporal. Hyunuk just readies his fists as the murmuring crowd watches. Without warning, Won-sok dashes forward and throws a vicious opening punch. Won-sok's massive fist sails toward his face. Meanwhile, outside the gym, two soldiers discuss the rising rumor of a new ace with the barbarian attribute. Warrant Officer Myonko Chown, the elite tactical instructor for the classified Black Tiger unit, suggests they step inside so they do not leave empty-handed. Back in the cage, Hyunuk absorbs a flurry of heavy blows. He quickly retaliates, driving a rapid series of kicks into the larger man's torso. Wonsok shakes off the strikes, roaring as he lunges with a devastating haymaker. The spectating soldiers gasp in shock. Hyunuk slips the clumsy strike and counters with a brutal cross, sending Wonsok crashing against the metal grate. Settling back into a calm stance, Hyunuk tests his footwork with a few light jabs. Wonsok glares back with gritted teeth as the massive crowd watches in stunned silence. Watching the cage from the back of the room, Myonko Chain's companion notes that the barbarian's punches carry incredible power. The warrant officer coldly points out that raw power is useless if the boy lacks the experience to actually land a hit. At the ringside, Sunguk's cronies furiously scream at Wonsok to stop playing around. As the angry gamblers demand their money's worth, Wonsok realizes in a panic that he is not going easy at all. He throws another desperate punch, but his body feels inexplicably heavy. By secretly flicking his fingers to manipulate the metal in his opponent's boots, Hyunuk makes every step feel like wading through a swamp. Wonsok throws a heavy punch, but Hyunuk easily meets the strike head-on. Shocked by the resistance, Wonsok unleashes a desperate flurry of blows that grab nothing but air. Hyunuk just grins, knowing his secret metal control ability is completely dictating the pace. Wonsok clutches his leg in sudden pain, wondering why his boot feels so incredibly heavy. Hyunuk smirks and asks the arrogant private if he is finally starting to feel scared. Furious at being mocked by an F-class, Wonsok lunges forward, triggering a massive clash of energy. The watching soldiers flinch as Wonsok activates Berserker mode, his eyes glowing a furious red. Hyunuk calmly clenches his fists, while Myonko notes this has escalated far beyond a simple sparring match. To the observers, it looks like a charging buffalo facing down a leopard waiting to bare its fangs. The massive private looms over his much smaller opponent. The crowd marvels at a D-class using body strengthening, as Wonsok vows to finish the fight immediately. He vanishes in a flash of speed and drives a devastating punch straight down. The brutal impact sends Hyunuk skidding backward across the cage. The gym erupts into cheers, praising Wonsok as the battalion's undisputed next ace. But Wonsok suddenly clutches his trembling fist, agonizing over a throbbing pain that feels like he just punched solid steel. Hidden in the smoke, Hyunuk activates his D-rank steel physique, reinforcing his arms with a glowing blue aura. He playfully flicks his fingers, daring the punk to try again. Blinded by rage, Wonsok screams at the F-class and throws another reckless hook. Hyunuk moves with blinding speed, slipping entirely under the massive attack. Deciding this waste of time is over, he pivots and drives a crushing kick straight into the giant's ribs. Knowing that his opponent relies entirely on brute strength, Hyunuk lands a devastating strike to the face. He relentlessly batters the downed giant, the heavy metallic impact startling the onlookers. Watching the brutal ground and pound, Myongho smiles, pleased to see the recruit finally showing his predatory fangs. Like a leopard sinking its teeth into a massive bull, Hyunuk locks onto his target and refuses to let go. But the berserk Wonsok retaliates, grabbing the smaller man and hoisting him high above his head. Accusing Hyunuk of playing dirty tricks, the enraged private tries to crush him in a ferocious grapple. Hyunuk desperately kicks back, his face twisting as he struggles against the overwhelming physical power. The two fighters crash back down to the mat in a chaotic, brutal tangle. Wonsok forcefully slams him downward, spinning him completely upside down. Pinned against the chain-link fence, Hyunuk is trapped as the giant prepares to end the fight. As Wonsok catches him by the leg, Hyunuk instantly twists his body into a flawless flying armbar. Observing the sudden reversal, Myongho realizes that if Wonsok had followed through with his punch, his arm would have snapped. Still, he wonders if he overestimated Hyunuk, knowing a normal player shouldn't be able to submit a fully strengthened barbarian. Wonsok struggles, confident that Hyunuk cannot crush his strengthened arm. He unleashes a massive red punch to break the hold, but Hyunuk simply grabs the giant by his little finger. He violently twists Wonsok's entire body, locking him down again. Pushing his steel physique to its absolute limit, Hyunuk's arm glows blue. He fluidly transitions into a brutal rear-naked choke. Watching from above, Myonko smirks as he recognizes the perfect counter. A carotid choke completely bypasses Wonsok's muscular strengthening. Wonsok grins, trying to rip the hold apart, only to realize he cannot break free. System warnings flash as Hyunuk risks his own body, crushing Wonsok's face. Panicking, Juno begs Sergeant O to stop the fight before someone dies. Hyunuk glares coldly at his bruised opponent. He leaves Wonsok hanging in the cage, sending a silent warning to his hostile sergeant. Sanguk O swallows hard, suddenly terrified by the F-class player's dominance. Refusing to be humiliated in front of the entire gym, Wonsok grips his head in denial. Declaring himself the next ace, he throws another desperate punch. His clothes shred as he forces his body into a second, agonizing strengthening state. Red energy erupts around him as he screams in pain. Hyunuk tightens the chokehold from behind, refusing to let go. Myonko is deeply impressed, wondering which predator will break first. Wonsok strains with all his might, roaring as the choke cuts off his blood flow. His face contorts as he chokes on his own desperate breath. Finally, the massive barbarian collapses completely unconscious in the center of the ring. The watching soldiers stare in stunned, fearful silence. Myonho's heart pounds with excitement, flashing a menacing smile at the birth of a real monster. Myonko senses the towering aura of a massive, predatory beast as Hyunuk stands triumphantly over the unconscious Wonsuk. The surrounding soldiers cheer wildly for Corporal Lee's unbelievable victory. As the men fuss over his condition, Hyunuk suddenly turns, startled by a commanding voice. His eyes narrow intensely, immediately recognizing the dangerous presence approaching him. Demanded to state his name. He snaps a crisp salute and introduces himself as Corporal Hyunuk Lee. The imposing man introduces himself as Myonko Cheon, the tactical instructor for the classified Black Tiger unit, and praises the brutal duel. Holding up his tiger emblem identification, Myongho openly offers a scouting position, sending a shockwave of disbelief through the spectating soldiers. As the crowd marvels at an invitation from the army's strongest unit, Hyunuk politely declines, claiming he is only an F-class player. Myongho waves off the rank as a meaningless standard for ordinary people, leaving Hyunuk deeply frustrated by the relentless pressure to build a military career. Knowing the military's closed-off nature will eventually drag him into unwanted villain conflicts, Hyunuk reluctantly accepts the black business card. He promises to think about it with a trembling salute, desperate to keep his distance. Watching from the sidelines, Sergeant O grits his teeth in a seething, helpless rage. Later, inside the battalion commander's office, Myonko relaxes on a sofa and complains about the military's constant personnel shortage. Battalion Commander Gangzak Kim sips his tea, agreeing that external guilds are aggressively headhunting even C-class soldiers right out from under them. The two veterans exchange a sudden, intense glare. Gangzuk breaks the tension with a hearty laugh, prompting Myonko to guess that he came looking for the talented Sergeant Youngjun Choi, a fierce warrior known for wielding a glowing blade through fire. Youngjun is a highly coveted asset. Myonko smiles thinly over his teacup, coldly informing the commander that the sergeant is currently on leave. Myonko's gaze sharpens as he declares he has found an interesting soldier instead. His eyes glow with crackling blue lightning. Across the room, Battalion Commander Gangsok Kem sips his tea. The scarred commander crosses his arms, deeply intrigued by the recommendation. Outside in the dark field, Gyeonuk sprints until he is gasping for air. Gamsak watches the lapse from his window and immediately orders a background check on the corporal. Down on the track, a younger soldier desperately clings to Hyunuk, begging to learn his secrets. Hyunuk miserably tries to shake the brat off, completely exhausted by the unwanted attention. Watching from above, Gangzok decides to test the corporal's limits. He flashes a wide, unsettling grin, blaming Hyunuk for making the other men greedy. Meanwhile, out in the busy night streets of Itaewon, a blur dashes past the pedestrians. A young boy spots the leaping figure and excitedly calls out to the monkey. The hooded creature turns, and the boy trembles as he realizes it is no animal. A snarling monster with glowing yellow eyes emerges from the shadows. Suddenly, an entire horde of the terrifying beasts pours out of a dark portal. Back at the base, Hyunuk stares in absolute shock. Standing inside the brightly lit armory, he is informed that Gangzok has granted him a weapon and time off, despite not trusting him. Hyunuk remembers how strict Yunaseo was in his past life, but he calmly assures her that whatever she suspects is in the past. She stares at him in silence before coldly calling him arrogant. Noting the identical sword marks on the dead goblins, she demands to know how he supposedly stopped the first wave completely alone. Ignoring her interrogation, he tests out a shabby wooden sword, prompting her to warn him not to pick garbage just because she pressured him. Hyunuk knows this seemingly insignificant weapon will one day make Sergeant Youngjun Choi a renowned swordmaster. The blade secretly holds the power of the Thunder God, and Hyunuk smiles menacingly as he realizes it will grant him devastating lightning magic. Anha asks if he is really settling for such a pathetic reward, but he happily accepts it. Suddenly, an alarm blares through the armory, and Hyunuk notes that he is out of time. Soldiers scramble through the barracks as the emergency broadcast announces a massive gate breakout in Itaewon. Yuna stares at Hyunuk, finding it deeply suspicious that he seems entirely calm and completely unsurprised by the disaster. Meanwhile, out on the modern city streets, heavily armored knights march in formation. The Blue Flower Guild arrives as rear support for the gate, showing off their state-of-the-art gear. Awestruck onlookers joke that selling just one set of their armor could buy an entire building in Gangnam. Nearby, the soldiers watch the heavily armored troops and dream about joining a top guild after discharge. Their commander briefs them on the Cobalt Gate, warning that the creature's toxic gas makes them deadlier than orcs. When a soldier questions the strict gear checks, the commander furiously asks if he wants his eyes torn out by the beasts. The men laugh off the danger, openly mocking Hyunuk's unit for holding strategy meetings. The elites scoff at the support squad, calling them a useless group of low-class players incapable of growth. Warned to check his gas mask, an arrogant soldier dismisses the advice, declaring he will not listen to losers. He sarcastically addresses the support squad commander, laughing as he walks away. Left in the dark, the support squad members grit their teeth in silent humiliation. Noticing his men flinching, the leader barks at them to snap out of it, reminding them that their lives are on the line. He orders them to plant motion sensors in the narrow sewage passages where the small monsters usually emerge, giving them 20 minutes. As the squad disperses, two soldiers whisper about how unusually tense Corporal Lee seems tonight. Hyunuk stares intensely into the shadows just as a soldier laughs, asking what his superior wants. Suddenly, a sharp blade pierces the man's shoulder and another strikes his neck in a spray of blood. The lifeless body crashes to the pavement just as violent explosions rock the street. Toxic green smoke floods the area, sending panicked soldiers scrambling for their gas masks as they choke and collapse. Chaotic gunfire erupts as swarms of grotesque rat-like kobolds ambush the blinded men in the fog. A fallen soldier screams in terror, trembling helplessly as a massive clawed hand descends to finish him off. The massive horned creature looms over the helpless soldier, its glowing yellow eyes fixed on its prey. The victim's eye widens in absolute terror. Grinning maliciously, the monster raises a knife, revealing a gruesome necklace made of blue eyeballs. The horned figure drives the dagger down, leaving the victim screaming in agony. From a distance, a cloaked figure watches the horned demon ignite a massive fiery sword. Severely injured and furious, Hyunuk desperately begs Junmo to run away. Junmo reaches out to help, only to be brutally slashed across the neck. As his friend's severed head falls, Hyunuk screams in pure agony. Back in the present, Hyunuk stares coldly into the night, remembering how Junmo died to save him. As the squad finishes installing the sensors, Hyunuk urgently calls out to the trembling private. Junmo immediately pledges to follow any command his superior gives. Hyunuk quietly orders him to take the entire squad and evacuate the operation area on his signal. Shocked, Junmo stammers that leaving is armed desertion, but Hyunuk intensely insists it is a tactic. Elsewhere, an armed strike team reports finding a massive kobold nest. In a dark, rusted alleyway, a solitary figure waits in the shadows. A tactical squad smashes into the dark building and deploys their formation. The strike platoon dashes forward to ready their magic circles. Suddenly, a massive swarm of rat-like kobolds surges out of the shadows. The horned beasts roar, charging directly at the defenders. The armored soldiers hold their ground behind glowing magical barriers. As a beast strikes the shield, the order to fire triggers a massive burst of flame. Intense magical fire completely engulfs the screeching horde. Elsewhere in the dark streets, the support squad scrambles to secure the perimeter. Soldiers quickly attach motion sensors across the designated zones. First Lieutenant Minhee Lee approaches, demanding to know what Hyunuk is doing. Minnie mocks the manual's aluminum tape protocol as a complete joke. He arrogantly reminds Hyunuk of his rank as a C-class mage. Minnie orders the squad to prepare antidote kits before the platoon advances. Hyunuk silently reviews his real orders to stop any escaping monsters from reaching the civilian rear. Watching the tense exchange from a distance, Junmo stares in deep concern. Wonseok Lee grits his teeth, furiously mocking Hyunuk for thinking he is special. He angrily points his finger, claiming the corporal's only real combat experience was a minor base incident. Wonseok scolds him to wipe the look off his face, completely dismissing his abilities. Suddenly, Staff Sergeant Sona Choi, a C-class healer, arrives and asks if something is wrong. Caught off guard, the arrogant soldier stammers out a weak excuse. Meanwhile, the soldier silently notices a menacing presence appearing behind them. Oblivious, the soldier claims he was simply teaching the clueless support squad about real battles. Sona laughs awkwardly at the tense atmosphere before suddenly remembering her actual mission. She informs a highly confused Hyunuk that the battalion commander has specifically called for him. Outside in the restricted urban zone, elite soldiers secure the rooftops over the barricaded streets. Snipers maintain a strict overwatch as the nighttime operation continues. Down in the dark alleys, Sonya gently reassures Hyunuk not to stress over the harsh words. She winks warmly, promising to finish installing the perimeter sensors so he can leave immediately. Hyunuk sighs in deep frustration as he turns away. Knowing time is running out to stop the monsters, his blue eyes narrow with fierce intensity. He desperately wonders what on earth the battalion commander is thinking by pulling him away now. Up on the rooftops, an attack platoon sniper questions why their elite unit was deployed for mere kobolds. Her partner firmly cuts her off, reminding her that soldiers simply need to follow orders. Inside, the scarred battalion commander Gangsak Kim waits alongside the stern warrant officer Myung Kam Ko-chan. The commanding officers turn their cold gaze toward the young corporal as he steps into the room. Hyunuk responds affirmatively but gulps nervously as he wonders why the commander summoned him. Gangsak Kim calmly assigns him as the acting platoon leader for the first squad, replacing Sergeant Youngjun Choi for a sudden test. Sonya Choi watches silently as the young corporal internally panics, remembering that the commander never paid him any attention in his previous life. Sweating profusely, the regressor realizes his time is running out and forces himself to pull it together. He steps forward and urgently addresses the silently waiting commander. Hyunuk argues that he has only ever done support duties, angrily questioning why a test should risk the squad's lives in real combat. Gangsak coldly shuts him down, declaring it an absolute order, leaving Hyunuk grimacing in deep frustration. Suddenly, a radio operator reports that the boss monster has escaped, broadcasting an urgent warning across the network. Hyunuk's eyes widen as he realizes the kobolds will slaughter the support squad, tightly clenching his jaw as he vows to escape immediately. Desperate, he asks for permission to speak, and Gangsok sternly tells him to go ahead. The corporal pauses, his mind racing to formulate a plan. Elsewhere in the dark city, Minnie Lee scans the streets through her binoculars, looking completely confused by what she sees. Having somehow escaped the command center, Hyunuk dashes frantically into the night, screaming out for the support squad. He ignores the warning signs, pushing his body to the absolute limit down the blurred alleyways. Back at the rear, alarms blare as Junmo Park trembles in terror, clutching his weapon as monstrous shadows loom right behind him. As the monstrous green fog sweeps through the overgrown city, Hyunuk sprints desperately forward. He pushes himself to the limit, realizing the disaster is unfolding much faster than he remembers. A memory flashes back to the command center, where Hyunuk boldly confronts Gangsakam about losing his entire unit on his first mission. The scarred commander flinches as Hyunuk protests being forced into a combat squad just for a test. He demands to know if the respected commander views ordinary soldiers as mere expendables. Gangsak calmly claims there is a misunderstanding, while a subordinate officer furiously pledges his life to the commander. Deeply frustrated that he cannot reveal his knowledge of the future, Hyunuk holds his ground. He argues that putting someone without real combat experience in charge will only guarantee casualties. Refusing to sacrifice his comrades for a simple validation test, he outright rejects the order. The furious officer screams that disobeying orders carries the death penalty, but Hyunuk knows the rear unit will die if he stays. Seeing his absolute resolve, Gansuk finally relents, ordering him to proceed with his original support mission. However, the scarred commander coldly promises that Hyunuk will face severe consequences for his insubordination later. Hyunuk freezes as a loud beep echoes through the hazy streets. He kneels in frustration, cursing the army as the poisonous gas completely blocks his vision. Opening his inventory, he pulls out the cloud sword and pours water over its glowing blade. Activating an electrifying staff, he rushes into the dark forest, terrified that he is already too late to save them. He wades through the murky green water, hearing desperate screams begging Junmo to flee. Deeper in the fog, massive monkey-like creatures are brutally stabbed. The soldier screams in absolute horror as blood splatters across the ground from a fallen comrade. Nearby, a massive rat-like monster ambushes the squad, prompting a soldier to frantically scream for help. A terrified soldier snaps his rifle around, aiming blindly into the swirling mist. As another rat creature tears into a soldier, a squad mate furiously screams at the beast to back off. He fires wildly, but a massive monster swings a pickaxe down on him. Bleeding and cornered, the squad desperately fights off the swarming red-eyed rats. Injured men cough and tremble in the mud, while the remaining soldiers unleash a frantic barrage of gunfire. A soldier orders the support squad to drag the wounded into a temporary barrier box for safety. Despite their relentless shooting, more bodies fall onto the blood-soaked ground. The brutal slaughter shatters their morale, sending a soldier into a shrieking panic. A squad mate desperately begs the trembling platoon sergeant to pull himself together. Hyperventilating behind his gas mask, the sergeant realizes with crushing guilt that the screaming girl is only 20 years old. Gripping his rifle, Private Jummo Park feels completely powerless as his support unit runs dry on ammunition. With his squad down to their last magazines, they desperately try to fend off a flying swarm. Trembling behind his gas mask, Junmo wonders if they are all really going to die here. Suddenly, he frantically asks himself what Corporal Hyunuk Lee would do in a situation like this. As another soldier screams for a medic for the bleeding Private Anand, Junmo makes a desperate decision. Hearing his terrified comrades announce they are completely out of bullets, he slides his baton away. Clenching his electrified hammer, Junmo shouts for the entire support squad's attention. Knowing the kobolds are attracted to shiny objects, he vows to lure the swarm using his lightning ability. Ignoring his sergeant's protests, Junmo reminds them that the Blue Flower Guild is just outside the red zone. As monstrous wolves emerge from the fog, Junmo realizes his pathetic electric ability cannot kill a single monster. However, he tells himself it can be used to save people and charges screaming into the horde. The massive beasts lock their glowing eyes onto the lone soldier wielding the sparking hammer. As the shadowy horde rushes toward the flashing light, Junmo growls and swings his weapon. He screams for his squad to run and the terrified soldiers can only watch him sacrifice himself. Dashing away from the pursuing monsters, Junmo knows exactly how Hyunuk would utilize such a weak power. Surrounded by snarling beasts, he smiles, certain that the corporal would have definitely used him as bait. Suddenly, a man bursts into the fray, conjuring blue energy whips that strike down multiple goblin-like creatures. Swinging his glowing hammer, Junmo violently slaughters a rat-like monster, causing a bloody mess. In the chaos of the murky swamp, someone suddenly bumps into the exhausted private. Hyunuk stands over the fallen Junmo, scolding the young private for thinking his last words wouldn't be heard. Raising his glowing dagger, Hyunuk releases a dense water fog that immediately neutralizes the toxic green gas. Jumo stares up in absolute awe, catching his breath in the clearing mist. As Hyunuk calls his name, the private tearfully admits he was just trying to imitate his bravery. Hyunuk smiles warmly, praising the trembling boy for staying alive. As snarling kobolds emerge and collapse from the lingering fog, Hyunuk tells Junmo how incredibly proud he is of his courage. His smile turns into a manic grin as he thanks Junmo for setting up such a splendid feast. Raising his glowing sword, Hyunuk declares he will devour it all. He unleashes a massive wave of blue energy that violently slashes through the monstrous horde. The creatures fall, leaving behind glowing red gems as Junmo gulps nervously. Hyunuk eyes the loot and calls it delicious, leaving the confused private to ask if he means the kobolds. Annoyed by the remaining monsters, Hyunuk glares at the swarm. He coldly demands to know where their boss is hiding. Suddenly, massive purple beasts loom from the mist, turning their glowing eyes toward the duo. Junmo looks up in terror as Hyunuk readies his blade against the overwhelming numbers. As the endless horde rumbles forward, a desperate scream rings out, warning that their entire squad is in terrible danger. On a nearby rooftop, The commander orders her snipers to hold the line against the escaping kobolds. A sniper acknowledges the command, asking where she is going as she turns away. Realizing Hyunuk somehow predicted this disaster, the red-haired commander leaps directly into the toxic abyss. Below, Sonja Choi weeps behind her gas mask, paralyzed by terror as she begs for salvation. Desperate soldiers shake the crying healer, screaming at her to save their dying comrade. Nearby, 2 armored guards struggle to maintain their barrier against a devastating dark spell. A monstrous fiery-haired beast channels the swirling red magic, overpowering their defenses. As the magical barrier shatters, terrified soldiers cower in the ruins, certain they are about to die. The multi-eyed boss monster reaches out to unleash its final, lethal strike upon the broken squad. Suddenly, 2 silhouetted figures sprint directly above the endless horde of glowing orange eyes. Hyunuk lunges from the darkness with a glowing blue blade, furiously defending his squad members. The fiery boss monster roars, narrowly dodging the lethal sweep of Hyunuk's energy whip. From the shadows, the kobold dark magician emerges, unleashing a massive blue energy beam from a cursed pot. The beast swings wildly, but the immense power instantly cracks its own weapon. Immediately, a fierce ape-like monster and dozens of masked rat creatures dash forward to swarm the gap. Startled by the sheer numbers, Hyunuk leaps into action, sprinting through the mist alongside Junmo. The kobolds fire a barrage of blowgun darts, forcing Hyunuk to desperately deflect the deadly rain with his glowing blade. As the sharp projectiles overwhelm their defenses, Hyunuk screams for Junmo to get down. The terrified private hits the dirt just as Hyunuk activates his metal control, sending a swarm of glowing blue daggers tearing through the monsters. However, the rapid conversion speed causes him to lose control of his bayonet, and the ape monster grins menacingly as the blade falls away. Firing his rifle, Hyunuk realizes the dark magician is directly controlling the horde, meaning intimidation is completely useless. He knows that protecting Junmo makes a full-scale engagement far too risky, so he orders an immediate retreat. Junmo panics, asking for a signal, but Hyunuk simply yells at him to run. They dash frantically through the mist, narrowly dodging another volley of toxic darts as they flee. The barrage continues, striking down a soldier with a burst of blue energy. Hyunuk leaps from a crate, deflecting a magical spear with a sharp clang. A furious beast watches through the smoke as its attacks are parried. Hyunuk smiles in relief, knowing that a single second's delay would have been fatal. But his relief shatters when he finds his squad surrounding a gravely bleeding comrade. A soldier shouts that Private An is dying, and Hyunuk demands to know why their medical officer is not acting. He realizes with horror that the squad's only healer is completely paralyzed by fear. Staff Sergeant Sona Choi cowers behind her gas mask, trembling in a full-blown panic attack, knowing that her breakdown will get them all annihilated. Hyunuk coldly calls her name. He steps forward and sharply calls out to the crying healer. He glares down at her, demanding to know if she intends to let everyone die. As the others desperately tend to the bleeding private, Siana weeps in shock. Hyunuk sternly reminds her that they are in the middle of a war zone. His voice drops as he asks if she truly wants to spend her life agonizing over this regret. Staring into his furious blue eyes, the terrified healer softly calls his name. A sudden burst of glowing chains erupts in the distance as mysterious figures observe the chaos. Snapping back to reality, Siana quickly summons her glowing spellbook over Private Anand. She admits she arrived late, but fiercely vows not to give up on the bleeding soldier. Hyunuk warmly thanks her. He then commands the squad's bayonets to float around him in a glowing blue aura. As Sona watches in shock, he angrily declares that the monsters will pay. Elsewhere, a large, furry spider chirps softly. Its owner, a woman in sunglasses riding in a luxury car, decides to head toward Itaewon. Back in the mist, Hyunuk steps toward the growling monsters and spots his marked target. The dark magician points its staff as Hyunuk flies forward on trails of blue energy. Heavy, armored monsters with bone helmets and massive axes loom from the shadows. Surrounded by his floating blades, Hyunuk smirks at the beasts. Knowing his traps are perfectly set to catch their hidden boss, he closes his eyes. Relying on his metal control skill, Hyunuk casts a detection web over the dark streets. He senses multiple shadowy figures armed with blades. Knowing any metal detected outside the safe zone belongs to the enemy, he identifies them as kobolds. His eyes snap open. Pushing his controllable metal weight to its limit, he plummets from above. A monstrous creature snarls at his sudden arrival. Hyunuk unleashes a barrage of glowing blue tendrils into the swarm. The mutated beasts are instantly entangled by the electric strikes. His floating bayonets violently impale the creatures. As he dashes through the darkness, a massive fiery figure suddenly erupts with a blazing red magic circle. The horned beast hurls a searing red spell directly into Hyunuk's blue lightning. Hyunuk flinches as the attacks collide. Spotting his true target at last, he lunges forward with a glowing blade. The fiery boss quickly raises a shield against the incoming magical barrage. Engulfed in flames, the creature lets out a deafening roar. Hyunuk glares in shock. Red energy violently binds his floating swords in midair. The cloaked beast snatches control of the electrified weapons. Its fiery orange eye gleams with malice. Furious, Hyunuk demands the monster give his bayonets back. He realizes in horror that his metal control skill is completely blocked by a stronger force. Suddenly, another monstrous creature looms from the shadows. 2 shamans with glowing red symbols raise their staffs. Left with only a single knife, Hyunuk desperately deflects a massive barrage of incoming arrows. Hyunuk gasps in wide-eyed alarm as the barrage closes in. He thrusts his glowing dagger forward, desperately trying to deflect the onslaught. The sheer force of the impact drives him to his knees. The fiery kobold boss channels its dark magic, turning the hijacked daggers against him. The demonic creature lunges with a shimmering blade, leading a fresh wave of vicious monsters. A massive rumble shakes the ground, and Hyunuk is brutally impaled by the spiky projectiles. He grits his teeth, realizing his steel physique just saved him from dying exactly like in his past life. His armored arm creaks as he tightens his grip on his glowing blade. The fiery boss narrowly dodges a sudden volley of glowing spears. Hyunuk glares murderously at the surrounding horde. As the dark creatures charge, he swings his weapon with a furious roar, telling them to get lost. Brilliant blue energy beams tear through the swarm, violently obliterating the charging kobolds. A massive whirlwind of energy erupts, sweeping the remaining creatures into a deadly vortex. The smoke clears, revealing the corporal standing unyielding in the ruined streets. The kobold dark magician flinches in shock as Hyunuk calls it out. Sprinting forward with fierce determination, he reaches out and declares that it is payback time. Hyunuk closes in on the dark magician, his eyes burning with intense resolve. He shouts that his payback is finally here. The masked creature snarls and grips its wavy dagger, ready for the strike. Hyunuk moves swiftly through the dense cover, unleashing a powerful green blast. He angrily warns the beast that throwing a fit will not save it. Glaring fiercely, he adds that he worked incredibly hard just to isolate it. Activating his metal detection, he observes the energy flowing between the abandoned vehicles. He realizes he will be caught again if he swings his bayonets recklessly. Crouching low to prepare a careful attack, he wonders why the monster is standing perfectly still. Hyunuk dashes forward, but the creature suddenly unleashes glowing red roots across the ground. A crackling red tendril snaps around Hyunuk's ankle, violently ripping his legs out from under him. The beast growls as the glowing red whip yanks Hyunuk into the air. Screaming, he is dragged upside down by the chains toward a glowing plant in the misty city. As crackling red energy floods the ruined streets, the furry creature smirks in triumph. Enraged, Hyunuk screams at the creature as an illusion of a blue-haired mage suddenly taunts him. He steps heavily through the rubble, his legs glowing with raw power. Blood drips from his chin as he asks how many times the horned beast plans to trigger his trauma today. His eyes flare with a piercing blue light as chaotic memories speed past him in a blur. The masked creature emerges from the cracked earth, forcing Hyunuk to relive desperate past battles. Visions of a treacherous spear strike to his back flood his mind as his boot skids across the ground. The blue-haired phantom furiously screams at the sneak attack, while Hyunuk tightly grips his weapon, roaring about how much he despises backstabbers. Hyunuk grabs the creature from behind and swings his glowing sword. The monstrous beast snarls, but Hyunuk stomps forward, his steel physique fully active. He delivers a crushing blow that shatters the creature's spiked mask, declaring that it deserves a brutal beating. He mercilessly kicks the falling monster, sending it tumbling head over heels through the thick green smoke. Approaching the trembling beast, he silently remembers his vow to butcher everyone who ever betrayed him. With its mask broken and its illusion magic destroyed, Hyunuk grins and promises to begin his PTSD treatment. A massive surge of glowing blue energy engulfs the roaring monster, completely overwhelming its defenses. The creature lies helpless in the debris, growling weakly until Hyunuk coldly threatens to kill it. He grabs the furry caster by the throat, asks what it knows, and hoists it into the air. He tells the gasping monster that the phantom blades tearing into its flesh belong to his fallen squad. Memories of Private Junmo Park smiling warmly before being brutally struck down flash through his mind. Remembering the severed heads and desperate screams, Hyunuk summons a glowing blade. He plunges the weapon into the creature's chest, avenging the life Junmo lost trying to save him. Choking the beast, he declares that this final strike is payback for the trauma inflicted on his scarred commander, Gangsak Kim. With a brutal, glowing swing, Hyunuk completely shatters the horned creature's mask and splits its face in half. Plunging his glowing sword into the fallen monster, Hyunuk exhales a weary breath. He realizes the first tragic piece of his past is finally rewritten, but a metallic clatter breaks his relief. He stares in absolute shock at the golden coin that drops from the corpse, recognizing it instantly. It is the Infernal Medallion, an artifact belonging to the monstrous tyrant who once commanded an endless undead army. Hyunuk wonders why a lowly boss would drop an item belonging to humanity's worst villain. He remembers the Necromancer, a tyrant who shared his unique non-growth trait. Clutching the golden artifact, Hyunuk wonders why the original Inferno appeared so early. As the poison gas clears, a fierce, red-haired woman points her glowing blade at him. Sweating nervously, Hyunuk realizes he is completely screwed and wonders how much she saw. A woman in a purple suit steps forward, introducing herself as Hana Yu of the Blue Flower Guild. The red-haired warrior barks Hyunuk's name across the street, which is littered with gruesome corpses. She aggressively aims her weapon, demanding to know what he is hiding. Forcing a bloody, unsettling smile, Hyunuk stammers and plays dumb. Catherine Yu interrupts their tense standoff with a slow, echoing clap. The woman with the spider casually praises the battle and recognizes the red-haired warrior. Startled, the warrior introduces herself as combat platoon leader Yuna Seo and orders the civilian away. Ignoring her, the woman turns to Hyunuk and offers him a blue rose guild card. When Hyunuk only stares, she expresses shock that he does not recognize her. Hyunuk clenches his jaw knowing exactly who this villain is. He remembers his past life where Eunice sacrificed herself to become his shield. He recalls her agonizing screams as a monstrous insect swarm devoured her alive. The architect of that massacre was Haina Yu, the butterfly-wielding tyrant sitting under the red moon. In the present, Haina boasts about the opportunity she offers, while Hyuna trembles with suppressed rage. Yoonha steps in firmly, demanding that Haina leave the restricted military zone immediately. Annoyed by the disrespect, Haina unleashes a crackling wave of lightning to correct Yuna's tone. As Yuna braces against the sudden pressure, blinding headlights pierce the darkness. A heavy boot hits the asphalt as Battalion Commander Gangseok Kim steps onto the battlefield. He scans the poisoned street, his scarred face hardening as he takes in the slaughtered bodies. Near a corpse impaled by a golden spear, Hyunuk recoils in terror, realizing he is trapped. Gangseok steps forward with a stern expression, while Yuna tightly grips the agitated corporal's armor. The scarred battalion commander greets Haina Yu, thanking the Blue Flower Guild for their support. However, he firmly states this is a restricted military zone and orders her to leave. Haina sighs about uptight soldiers, complaining that she was just about to have a serious conversation. She playfully draws blood from a man's neck with a decorative blade, pointing to his lapel. Smiling warmly, she gently touches Hyunuk's cheek and tells the corporal to call her. Hyunuk jumps to attention as Gangseok suddenly barks his name across the street. The commander abruptly appoints Hyunuk as the squad leader for the upcoming Cobalt Gate recovery operation. Yoonha looks on in shock, questioning what on earth the battalion commander is thinking. Gangseok declares that he will receive all reports directly from the corporal once the situation resolves. Yuna glares intensely at Hyunuk, who flinches under her murderous gaze while silently feeling relieved. Hunched over a restroom toilet, he suffers agonizing pain as a demonic breath room forms inside him. Another soldier walks in on his heavy panting and jokingly asks if he is watching something fun. Glowing with violent red energy, Hyunuk grits his teeth and struggles through the intense agony. He angrily yells that it is not what it looks like, startling the young private with a sudden flash. Meanwhile, the dismissed Cobalt Gate remains a looming disaster that has already left streets littered with casualties. Hyunuk realizes that thanks to Staff Sergeant Choi, Private An was safely evacuated. This incident forces Hyunuk to begin training the support squad to defend themselves. However, the pink-haired Staff Sergeant Choi quickly begins to get on his nerves. The constant interruptions remind him that the military has far too many variables. The second problem is Battalion Commander Gangseok Kim. Gangseok demands that Hyunuk become a proper officer to help build an ideal military culture. When the ghostly Private Junmo Park screams at him to accept, Hyunuk dismisses the thought. 3 weeks later at Seoul Station, a sudden flash inside a dark restroom startles him. Panting heavily as he unlocks the flame breath room skill, he is relieved to finally dispel rumors about his bathroom activities. Staring at his reflection, Hyunuk remembers the flashing cameras of the press demanding answers. He recalls the blood-splattered citizens trapped behind glass desperately screaming for rescue. Knowing he could actually die, he vows to use this vacation to change the future. Meanwhile, Staff Sergeant Choi steps outside complaining about military life as she clicks a broken lighter. Staff Sergeant Choi is completely surprised to see Hyunuk standing right behind her. She casually asks him for a light. Hyunuk obliges, and she ignites her cigarette. Suddenly, she realizes she just called him by his first name. She silently panics over revealing her true self to a subordinate. A short while later, they ride the subway together. An incredibly awkward silence fills the space between them. Wai subtly glances over at him. Trying to break the tension, she warmly assumes his parents will be thrilled to see him. Hyunuk flatly replies that both died when he was young. Koi immediately looks down, deeply regretting her words. Hyunuk simply stares ahead. He gently reassures her that he eventually found people who became his family. Joy looks up, completely surprised by his soft tone. In his mind, Hyunuk remembers the loyal fighters who once welcomed him home. Gazing out the window, he wonders if they were more like friends. A faint smirk crosses his face as he decides that comrades is the perfect word. Hyunuk arrives at Yangdunpo Station knowing the short vacation is his only chance to prepare. He flashes a dark grin, realizing his first priority is securing massive amounts of money. He stares up at a massive billboard for the Pine Tree Guild. He seriously considers targeting its multi-trillionaire owner Gordon Precy. Gordon Precy uses his black money to bribe officials and monopolize resources behind the scenes. Knowing that wealth cost humanity the war, Hyunuk decides he needs an absolutely loyal proxy to invest his funds. He heads to the Hope Guild, where a loud argument echoes down the stairwell. Inside, a white-haired man furiously complains about taking humiliating leftover security tasks. Hyunuk pushes the door open, instantly silencing the room. The white-haired man, Wanchul Lee, throws his arms wide and cheerfully announces his own awakening. He offers a handshake, calling him a friend. Hyunuk coldly rejects the gesture, stating they are not on good terms. The other guild members stare in shock, wondering if military service made Hyunuk lose his mind. Hyunuk asks if a polite greeting erased their past, prompting Wanchul to glare menacingly. Years ago, a younger Hyunuk tried to show off his weak telekinesis using school supplies. Disgusted by the useless ability, Wanchul brutally beat him down in front of their peers. He left Hyunuk humiliated and enraged over his weakness. Now a C-class fighter, Wanchul clenches his fists, eager to trash the tin can user all over again. Wancho screams threats while a guildmate desperately holds him back. Hyunuk's eyes glow blue as he coldly dares the C-class fighter to try it. Enraged, Wanchita lunges, but Hyunuk instantly strikes him down with a blurred punch. The fighter freezes in terror as crackling blue daggers hover inches away. Surrounded by lightning-charged swords, Hyunuk warns that he can inflict a permanent, critical injury. He presses an electrified pen to Wancho's temple, threatening to end his melee career forever. Suddenly, another guild member interrupts, asking what is going on among the clattering weapons. Hyunuk instantly drops his hostility, loudly apologizing and pulling a bewildered Wancho into a hug. Whispering in the fighter's ear, he reveals he knows Wancho once wet his pants and fled from a raid monster. Wancho looks horrified as Hyunuk threatens to expose this cowardice to the entire room. Later, Hyunuk sits down with Warrant Officer Myango Chen to discuss his future stock predictions. Hyunuk grins as the officer stares at a tablet, realizing this information is an absolute life-changer. Elsewhere, a group of suited men stand around idly, while their superior grinds his teeth in frustration. He angrily scolds them for their incompetence, but when one subordinate questions his authority, the boss snaps and grabs him. Screaming in frustration, he moves in a blur and launches the man high into the air. The subordinate crashes onto the pavement with a bone-crushing, bloody impact. He screams in agony as the rest of the thugs watch in sheer terror. Standing over the broken body, Wanchuo Lee orders his men to hunt down Hyunuk, his eyes glowing with murderous rage. Meanwhile, back at the Hope Guild, the analyst Cholso Park admits that the promised wealth is simply too hard to believe. Hyunuk calmly asks if he seems trustworthy, and Cholso immediately stammers that he does. Keeping his regression a secret, Hyunuk proves his worth by revealing an unprecedented officer commission offer from the battalion commander. Cholso stares at the phone in absolute shock, realizing the F-class player holds unimaginable influence. Hyunuk asks Cholso to invest his 20 million won inheritance, and the grateful analyst tearfully kneels. Hyunuk remembers crying in absolute despair during his past life. Back then, Cholso gently patted his shoulder and reassured him that everyone possesses talent. Hyunuk silently vows to repay that kindness from when he was a complete nobody. Later, Hyunuk considers the impending Gate War and the otherworldly beings humanity will soon encounter. He knows he must secure their magical technology to prevent the coming waves of doom. Searching the bustling Yangdongpo blacksmith alley, he begins his second preparation for the future. He intends to find the creator of the first master-grade item before the villains notice. Inside a shabby workshop, the eccentric artisan Zhongdu Kang rudely warns him not to pry. Hyunuk smiles, watching the old man forge the rugged orichalcon javelin that will eventually slay the dragon Tarax. Suddenly, a young woman in a school uniform loudly announces the arrival of a brat. Hyunuk warmly smiles at Bexial Kang, recognizing his old comrade and knowing she will soon inherit these skills to become a master blacksmith. Scanning his expensive boots, Bexial eagerly asks what he is looking for. Hyunuk smiles, knowing he has caught her attention with an 18 million won purchase. Zhongdu Kang sternly questions why a non-mage is buying poison-tight magic steel, but Bexial quickly defends her new VIP customer. Promising to return often, Hyunuk bids the pair farewell. Remembering her tragic death in his past life, he silently vows to protect her this time. Later that night, Hyunuk arrives at a cheap motel. He swallows handfuls of the poison-enchanted metal, determined to increase his resistance before his military vacation ends. To speed up the absorption, he activates his internal blast furnace. A barrage of system warnings instantly floods his vision as agonizing pain tears through his body. Writhing on the bed, he forces himself to endure, knowing the Soul Station Gate battle is rapidly approaching. 2 days pass with Hyunuk locked inside his room, successfully forging a Tier 2 poison resistance and massively expanding his metal control limit. Glowing with energy, Hyunuk assesses his new Tier 2 poison resistance, calculating that his expanded capacity can easily control 60 daggers. Earning a new skill called Metal Crush, he smirks, realizing he can now instantly disarm most enemy equipment. As blue lightning crackles around him, his eyes narrow with intense focus. Suddenly, a massive fist smashes a guard through his doorway, revealing Wanchul, who is shocked that Hyunuk anticipated the ambush. Hyunuk calmly asks his former bully to leave, but Wanchul just laughs maniacally and lunges forward. Stepping over the unconscious man, Wanchul throws a devastating glowing punch. A strange blue pattern erupts across Hyunuk's skin as he effortlessly catches the gauntlet mid-swing, leaving his attacker staring in disbelief. Noticing confused civilians gathering in the hallway, Hyunuk suggests they take the fight outside. Enraged by the perceived arrogance, Wancho lunges again, only to take a blindingly fast kick to the chest. Hyunuk coldly states that Wanchiel might have stood a chance 2 days ago, but not today, driving a glowing blue punch straight into his face. Wanchiel gasps in terror and collapses coughing, while Hyunuk stands over him, asking why he is pushing things this far. Spitting blood, Wanchiel flashes a malicious grin and warns him not to get overconfident about one lucky blow. Furious, Wanchero lunges forward with a blinding attack. Hyunuk barely dodges the glowing kick, warning that using skills inside will hurt innocent civilians. The white-haired fighter coldly dismisses the useless bystanders, forcing a frustrated Hyunuk to act. Realizing he is the only target, he dashes away to minimize damage to the building. Wanchiel screams in rage as Hyunuk leaps straight out into the night. A massive red blast shatters the wall, sending Hyunuk plummeting toward the street below. screaming death threats. Wanchiel dives through the rubble right behind him. The brutal red energy trails them both as they fall toward the parked cars. The crazed fighter charges downward, determined to finish the job. Mid-fall, Hyunuk hardens his body with steel physique and immediately activates metal control. Chaining his skills together, he braces himself as Wanchiel swings a massive weapon. Wanchiel watches in shock as Hyunuk shifts his momentum mid-air, landing safely on the asphalt. Channeling blue energy into his feet, Hyunuk realizes his steel physique still grants him incredible agility. Wanchiel launches a furious aerial kick, screaming that Hyunuk's cheap military tricks are useless. He unleashes a massive energy wave, but Hyunuk easily ducks beneath the blast. As the street trembles, Wanchiel furiously taunts Hyunuk for dodging like a rat. He unleashes a rapid barrage of kicks, demanding his old victim fight back. Inside the trembling building, terrified residents huddle together, while Hyunuk refuses to counterattack and endanger them. Spotting the murmuring onlookers in the windows, Wanchiel realizes exactly why Hyunuk is holding back. With a sadistic smirk, he coats himself in red energy and dashes toward the apartments. Hyunuk screams in horror, demanding to know if Wanchiel plans to collapse a building full of innocents. Wanchiel screams back that the civilians are guilty by association. Radiating violent energy, he dares Hyunuk to stop him, declaring they deserve to die for angering him. Watching the madman lunge, Hyunuk's eyes glow with a cold, murderous rage. Vowing to end Wanchiel's career, Hyunuk intercepts the strike with his D-rank Metal Crush skill. By channeling his mana into the Metal Crush skill, Hyunuk lands a devastating blow. He watches coldly as Wanchiel screams in agony over his shattered leg. The bully panics and begs him to stay back, but Hyunuk demands to know why he escalated the fight. When Wanchiel arrogantly compares him to an annoying mosquito, Hyunuk declares that people with such a superiority complex always become villains. Wanchiel tries to act tough, but Hyunuk points a lightning, crackling hand at him, warning him never to show his face again. As Wanchiel flinches in terror, Hyunuk grits his teeth, stating that the bully is lucky he is currently a soldier. Later at the Awakened Task Force police station, an officer confirms that witness statements match Hyunuk's claim of self-defense. The officer marvels that an F-class player survived unscathed, and Hyunuk cheerfully lies that Wanchiel's greaves suddenly exploded. Cleared to leave, Hyunuk realizes his low rank is the perfect cover to avoid suspicion. Behind him, another officer rushes in with a report showing the C-class armor had no defects, leaving the detective completely baffled. Meanwhile, Hyunuk sprints through the city until he spots a woman lying unconscious on the pavement. Hyunuk grimly recalls the original timeline, where the unprecedented Seoul Station Gate disaster claimed over 700 lives. Having no first-hand experience with this specific outbreak, he knows it remains one of history's worst catastrophes. Standing in the crowded terminal, he desperately wants to trigger a rampage to force an immediate evacuation. However, he holds back, knowing the villain responsible for the disaster is hiding somewhere among the oblivious passengers. He realizes that if the culprit slips away in the chaos, they will lose their only turning point to change the future. With only 2 minutes left, a familiar voice suddenly calls his name, and a pink-haired woman storms through the crowd. It is Vice Platoon Leader Sana, who furiously demands to know why his police station visit threw their unit into chaos. Hyunuk stares at the clock ticking down to 15:23, realizing his altered past somehow dragged her into the danger zone. As she continues to demand an explanation, he knows he has no time to safely get her out. Deciding to stick to his plan, he suddenly scatters a handful of metallic balls across the station floor. Bystanders and Sona angrily question if he has completely lost his mind. Ignoring their outrage, he coldly orders her to run for a gas mask the moment he gives the signal. Sona stares in utter shock as a massive purple vortex tears open the station's ceiling. A dark, armored monster plummets headfirst from the rift, and Hyunuk grits his teeth. He screams for her to move while just outside, a young woman bids her mother farewell. The mother warmly asks if she is sad to part, right as a jagged crack splits the sky. Without warning, a swirling void sucks the older woman away, leaving her daughter collapsed in horror. Hyunuk urges her to find a gas mask, and the beast continues its descent. Hyunuk sprints frantically away and bellows his signal one last time. The massive multi-legged creature smashes into the floor and unleashes a deafening roar. Bystanders freeze in absolute terror before scattering in all directions, screaming for their lives. Using the panic as cover, Hyunuk runs alongside Siana into the chaos. Amidst the fleeing crowd, a man begs the pink-haired woman to escape, but Selanya fiercely refuses. Vowing to treat the injured from the rear, she tearfully commands Hyunuk to survive at all costs. Hyunuk flashes a confident grin and sharply answers his platoon sergeant's order. Meanwhile, at headquarters, Brigadier General Choi furiously rejects Gangsok's proposal to commission an F-class private as an officer. The general glares at the scarred battalion commander, warning that promoting such trash would destroy their recruitment. As Gonso grimaces in defeat, Choi coldly dismisses Hyunuk as nothing more than an insect. Suddenly, the office phone rings, bringing catastrophic news about the Seoul Station anomaly. The two officers freeze in absolute shock as they learn an unlucky event has triggered. Back at the station, terrified soldiers hurl fiery magic at an unprecedented, massive spider monster. A golden energy barrier shatters under a brutal stomp, sending a defender flying through the air. The monstrous creature crashes forward through the flames, violently blasting the soldiers backward into the rubble. The soldiers quickly realize their fire magic is completely useless against the beast. Manhwa, the security team leader, urgently orders his men to switch to ice magic. As the metallic creature lunges forward, the soldiers unleash a freezing barrage. Manhwa touches a magic circle on the floor, causing jagged ice to erupt around the monster's legs. Knowing the massive beast will break free soon, Manhwa charges forward to blind it himself. He is immediately met by a devastating burst of energy as the creature shatters its icy restraints. The massive monster towers over them, locking its multiple glowing eyes onto the soldiers. Manhwa shouts in alarm, raising his glowing arm as he leaps directly at the monster's open jaws. He swings his glowing blade and desperately orders his men to raise their shields. A powerful, energy-infused strike slams heavily into the creature's thick hide. However, the venomous armored spider's steel-like skin absorbs the blow without taking any damage. Stepping forward, Hyunuk watches the brutal chaos and wonders if he can handle this monster yet. He questions if 2 days of preparation were enough, but his eyes glow with fierce blue lightning. Refusing to doubt, he tests his new strength as the massive spider crackles with deadly blue electricity, pushing his rapidly draining mana to its limit. Hyunuk screams as he unleashes his power. He channels the surging energy, leaving Manhwa and the soldiers completely stunned. Realizing his new strength is working, Hyunuk laughs with wild confidence. He steps forward to face the roaring beast, knowing he can claim all the gate's rewards himself. Surrounded by crackling blue orbs, he taunts the monster, promising to end its rampage in one strike. He unleashes a barrage of glowing blue projectiles, tearing into the armored creature. Grinning maniacally, Hyunuk uses his magic to grind the beast's metallic insides to pieces. The massive creature finally collapses before him, totally defeated. Watching in disbelief, Manhu realizes this lone man just destroyed a monster their entire team couldn't scratch. Seeing Hyunuk stand so casually amidst the falling energy, the veteran wonders if this is true S-class power. Meanwhile, a hidden observer furiously curses the stranger for ruining his quest. Manhu quickly approaches to introduce himself and ask if Hyunuk is an S-class player, but Hyunuk cuts him off, warning that the first wave is not over yet. Suddenly, 2 massive purple insectoid monsters tear through the glowing energy field, sending Manhwa into a panic. Hyunuk merely grins, completely certain of his newfound strength. Summoning a storm of blue electricity, he lunges forward to stop the Soul Station gate himself. Sharp projectiles and crackling energy rapidly shred through the monstrous creatures. He lands heavily before a massive plant-entangled metallic structure, leaving the veteran security leader completely stunned. Hyunuk warns him again not to lower his guard, just as 2 more vicious spider monsters emerge. Manhu recoils in shock, but Hyunuk smiles coldly at the beasts, mocking their petty tricks. Outside the dark, starry dome trapping the station, military battalions rapidly complete their assembly. Watching the soldiers, armored players wonder if they could just use siege magic to shatter the barrier. A stern warrior explains that system rules are absolute, meaning they have no choice but to wait. As choppers touch down, Battalion Commander Gain-So Kim meets with Haina Yu, the Blue Flower Guild's strategy manager. Haina questions the logic of sending a low-level rescue team, calling it a senseless suicide mission. Gangziok pulls off his sunglasses, his scarred face tight with anxiety over the 800 lives trapped inside. He refuses to abandon them, silently reminding himself that they already have their trump card on the inside. Inside the dome, Hyunuk unleashes a roaring blast of blue lightning, completely obliterating the first creature. Suddenly, a massive multi-eyed monster lunges from above, forcing him to narrowly dodge its crushing strike. Smashing through the debris with his metal control, he orders the security team to freeze the beast immediately. Manhwa's mages firmly obey, unleashing a massive barrage of ice magic. As the freezing blast engulfs the creature, its massive body begins to crystallize. Hyunuk immediately raises a glowing shield to block its frantic counterattack. He ruthlessly draws its attention back to himself, warning the beast not to get distracted. A devastating kick slams into the creature's armored shell, forcing out an agonized roar. The colossal insectoid crashes heavily to the ground, its frozen armor shattering into pieces across the floor. Smirking through the surging lightning, Hyunuk warns the cracked, snarling monster that it is time to join its dead friend. However, he begins to struggle from the exertion. Staring down the towering entity, he heavily grits his teeth as he pushes his limits. Somewhere in the station, the hidden observer curses his ruined plan. From the darkness, a sinister figure glares menacingly, furious at the unexpected interference. Meanwhile, with the massive insect dead, the security team gathers in the concourse. They approach Hyunuk, thanking him profusely and asking for his name and rank. Hyunuk just stares past them in silence. When the officers ask if something is wrong, he quietly wonders where the rest of their team is. Suddenly, Sayona rushes over shouting his name, leaving the security officers bewildered that a high-tier player is in the military. The officer hesitates, awkwardly asking for his official rank despite the ongoing crisis. Hyun-nu quickly cuts her off, warning that they might be dealing with a dual gate. As the others freeze in shock, he realizes they need to move fast before the hidden villain strikes again. Outside, staring at a glowing red rift in the sky, Battalion Commander Gangzak Kim appoints First Lieutenant Heeman to lead the rescue. Heeman stammers his obedience while his own troops murmur about his low level. Frustrated, Heman snaps at them to focus as Gungseok orders the men to protect the citizens at all costs. Before they deploy, the scarred commander gives Heman one final strict order. If they find Corporal Lee, they must follow his lead. Heman stares back, completely stunned by the command. Inside the newly formed dual gate, the hidden observer stares in shock. He finds a cavern filled entirely with slaughtered monsters. Checking his quest log, he tells himself he has to hang on. He desperately vows to stay calm and complete this life-changing quest. A shadowed man unleashes a sudden flash of light. Elsewhere, a massive gnarled creature shifts amidst thick, creaking roots. A hidden figure feigns innocence, claiming to be a terrified railway security guard. Hyuna coldly exposes the man's plan to hide among the citizens. He knows the fake guard has put a lot of thought into his deceptive plan. Hyunuk greets him as Jusip Yang, shocking the trapped man into demanding his identity. Hyunuk glares with murderous rage, knowing exactly what kind of villain Jusip really is. Enraged at being called a villain, Jusip drops his act completely. Hanging upside down from the thick roots, he watches Hyunuk drop into the rocky cavern. Yusei gloats that rank means nothing when their abilities are fundamentally incompatible. Sharp wooden spikes rush through the tunnel toward Hyunuk. Knowing exactly how their abilities match up, Hyunuk just smiles as fiery energy crackles around him. He unleashes a massive swirling blast of golden fire straight from his mouth. Hyunuk remembers his past life, where Jusop's cannibal tree brutally constricted and devoured innocent people. He remembers the villain arrogantly taunting the Steel Emperor while slaughtering the helpless. The ground trembles as Jusop struggles amidst the roots, demanding Hyunuk keep up his big talk. Hyunuk drops straight down into the dense cavernous forest of twisted vines. Emerging from the earth, Jusop boasts that elemental compatibility always beats a higher rank. Hyunuk merely smirks as sharp spikes are wrapped around him, calmly agreeing with the logic. He suddenly dashes forward, smashing through the debris with incredible speed. Yusup flinches in shock, wondering why a long-range fighter is moving so fast. Hyunuk propels himself downward with bursts of blue energy. The villain ducks behind his thick roots as a violent blast slams into the wood. Gliding over the cracked ground, Hyunuk delivers a glowing kick. Jusiap watches the reckless charge, confident that physical strikes cannot harm him. Hyunuk throws a massive punch, letting himself get entangled in the thorny vines. The impact scatters debris around the red-haired villain. From behind his root barrier, Jusiap dares the fool to keep attacking. Hyunuk lands on the gnarled structure, flashing a confident grin as he decides this is enough firewood. Yusiap mocks him for getting so close, proudly declaring his deadly cannibal tree ability. He vows to chew off the intruder's arms and devour them whole. But Hyunuk just smiles with fiery energy, pressing his mutated arm directly against the dark red roots. Jusukim's arrogant laughter dies as he realizes in horror that his tree cannot digest the flesh. Suddenly, Hyunuk erupts with intense fiery yellow energy. Jusiap stares in absolute shock, horrified that a man who was just throwing iron beads now wields massive flames. Desperate, Jusiap begs for his life, offering all his quest rewards and grinning as he assumes Hyunuk will accept the deal. Instead, Hyunuk effortlessly unleashes a blazing inferno, furiously shouting that Jusiap used the exact same trick in his past life. Yusup barely has time to register the impossible words before Hyunuk's roaring flames swallow him whole. He screams in agony as the blazing energy drags him down into the fiery abyss. Meanwhile, outside the gate, heavily armed AMT rescue units nervously descend into the danger zone, raising their rifles as a glowing portal opens. One soldier gasps in terror as a massive, armored purple spider emerges from the dark void. A squad mate violently shushes him, desperate to maintain their stealth in the ruined station. When the rescue team finally announces their presence, a hiding survivor peeks out in sheer relief. He reports that everyone evacuated safely, prompting the rescue team to ask if Yuniseo is safe at the temporary shelter. The survivor clarifies they are following the orders of a spiky-haired man named Hyunuk, leading a subordinate to immediately realize it is Corporal Lee. Jimo begrudgingly apologizes but quickly scoffs that Corporal Lee is merely an F-class. A C-class soldier arrogantly seizes command, demanding to know how they bypass the level 15 restriction. The subordinate stands his ground, confident in the corporal's abilities. Nearby, a scarred guard seethes with rage as the terrified civilians realize the rescue squad is trapped. While the soldiers desperately plan to build barricades, Sanja confronts the armed security personnel. A volunteer rescuer checks on her, but she warns that the civilians know it is a dual gate. Panic erupts as a guard is struck, and an angry crowd corners the authorities to demand why the truth was hidden. They furiously accuse the soldiers of using them as human shields, exposing the scarred guard's leak. Elsewhere, Joseph coughs through the smoke, bitterly whining that his meticulous preparations are ruined. Hyunuk blasts him with blue magic, completely sick and tired of villains repeating the same pathetic excuses. Suddenly, a blinding light forces Hyunuk to shield his eyes as a massive portal opens above. Winged women descend gracefully from the glowing heavens, rapidly restoring his depleted health and mana. As the angelic beings float around him, a hidden system window declares him the Lightbearer, bringing a wicked grin to his face. He stares into the heavenly gateway, offered the ultimate chance to become the dawn of the world. Even as the winged beings embrace him before the divine temple, Hyunuk firmly declines the offer. The angels look completely shocked as he rejects the ultimate chance to become a guardian. He knows that the Guardian system is just another controlling organization, one that easily corrupts its members. He remembers Gordon Tracy and other monstrous traitors who were once celebrated as humanity's protectors. Gritting his teeth, Hyunuk angrily refuses to be leashed by their rigid periodic missions. The winged women pout and glare at his stubbornness. Once the portal vanishes, he stands alone in the skeletal cave, reaching out with surging blue energy. He secures the glowing Akashic Armory key, the exact artifact Jusap slaughtered innocents to find. Flashing a sinister, fanged smile, Hyunuk silently vows to completely ruin the villain's plans in this life. Meanwhile, back at the civilian camp, the panicked crowd continues their tense standoff with the authorities. The survivors refuse to stand down, terrified the soldiers will use them as human shields. Watching the chaos, he furiously realizes the massive mess the dead villain left behind. Junmo tries to calm the terrified civilians, asserting his authority as the rescue team leader. Hyunuk realizes that Lieutenant Colonel Kim never gave up on Seoul Station. The trapped survivors panic, demanding to know how 6 people can save them all. Hyunuk warns that they will all die once the second wave hits. As the crowd shouts their distrust, Hyunuk coldly asks if they have a better solution. The sudden intervention leaves the civilians and soldiers staring in absolute shock. He reminds them of the security team's sacrifice, asking who else is willing to fight. Yunhei levels her rifle at him, fiercely demanding to know where he has been. Hyunuk calmly replies that he just finished blocking the duel gate. Stunned by the impossible feat, Yuna furiously accuses him of lying. Ignoring her rage, Hyunuk barks orders to barricade the civilians and rallies the security personnel. Yuna grits her teeth, completely paralyzed by his overwhelming commanding presence. As ominous purple energy swirls nearby, Junmo hands Hyunuk his blade and a spellbook. Hyunuk gathers the fighters, explaining that the first wave's spider monster was unlisted. He warns that the second wave will likely bring far deadlier, poison-using creatures. While Yuna cedes at her team following him, Hyunuk plans to lure the monsters outside. Hyunuk lays out the operation plan with intense focus. He explains that as the massive purple monsters breach the building, they must draw their attention outside. Throwing himself downward into the swirling energy, he takes sole responsibility for acting as the bait. He orders Yuna and Junmo's teams to wait outside in strategic groups, laying down heavy cover fire. As the mechanical spiders crash through the metallic structure, the armed guards engage them along the tracks. Hyunuk instructs them to bind the creature's feet with freezing attacks, strictly warning against getting close. Crackling with intense blue lightning, he vows to personally crash down onto the massive beasts and brutally tear away their heavy armor. Once the armor is stripped, the masked soldiers must focus all their firepower on the exposed flesh to take the creatures down. Hyunuk explains that Junmo must command the operation from a high vantage point alongside Yuna. If Junmo constantly warps him, Hyunuk can focus entirely on stripping the creature's armor with lightning. He points out that Junmo is the only person here who actually understands raid tactics. Flattered by the praise, the rescue leader grins and confidently agrees to the strategy. Hyunuk knows that with Junmo's warp ability, the operation should be easy as the team moves out. A swirling vortex appears in the station, and Hyunuk shouts for everyone to brace themselves. A system notification declares an unlucky event, and the survivors grimace against the sudden pressure. Hyunuk grins intensely, confident that his plan will still work. However, his confidence shatters when a massive dark purple creature materializes in the station. He stares up at the gigantic, multi-limbed monster in absolute shock, realizing that the future has completely changed. Hyunuk screams for everyone to run. The boss monster has arrived early. Hyunuk stares in absolute shock as the massive purple entity emerges from the vortex. He realizes the future has changed. As the soldiers panic, he orders everyone to hold their positions and stick to the strategy of luring it away from the civilians. The armored insectoid monster locks its glowing yellow eyes on him and prepares to attack. While the survivors cover their ears from its deafening roar, Hyunuk furiously wonders if his regression caused this early spawn. The beast immediately launches a devastating strike, shattering the ground and forcing him to snap out of his thoughts. Knowing they will be wiped out if he hesitates, Hyunuk channels his mana and activates his crush skill. A system warning flashes that his mana is rapidly draining, and he watches in horror as his crushing force completely fails against the monster's steel-like armor. The creature swings violently, crushing a solid pillar in a single blow, while Hyunuk desperately dashes away using his metal chain skill. As Hyunuk falls through the debris, he realizes his steel physique stands no chance. Gritting his teeth, he is nearly caught in the armored beast's devastating swipe. He steps off a shattered wall, his arm spinning rapidly as he builds momentum. Dashing forward with his dagger, he knows his chances are incredibly low. He throws himself directly at the monstrous purple entity, deciding this is the only way. Watching from afar, Yuna screams at him to stop being a lunatic and stick to the plan. But Hyunuk remembers his past life where he fought alongside Tactical Major General Lee. Back then, Yuna's brilliant work tactics and flawless knowledge of combat manuals had kept them alive. Yuna had carefully calculated every detail to perfectly time his warp skills in the rear. Every single strategy was the result of a relentless, desperate effort for survival. Now, Yuna stares in complete shock as Hyunuk plummets through the shattered window. The multi-limbed creature crashes through the glass facade right behind him. With his mana rapidly draining, Hyunuk stomps the ground, unleashing a massive blue energy trail. He violently yanks himself away, letting the structure crumble beneath the monster's weight. Suddenly, Yuna realizes Hyunuk is deliberately directing all the beast's attacks toward the building's support pillars. Struck by the sheer insanity of the plan, Yuna realizes the entire building is about to collapse. He stares in disbelief, desperately questioning what Hyunuk is trying to do. Hyunuk charges toward the structure, desperate to hold out as his mana plummets, but the beast raises its bladed arms. With a brutal smash, Hyunuk is sent flying through the debris, stumbling backward. Airborne and nearly out of mana, he pushes his steel physique beyond its limit and bursts forward. The monster unleashes a flurry of sharp claws, catching him in a powerful swirling vortex. Hyunuk cries out in pain as a devastating explosion shatters the ground around him. Trembling against a crumbling wall, he realizes he has finally destroyed all the support pillars. Deciding to act as bait so the monster doesn't notice, holding a glowing magical disc, Yunhe screams for Hyunuk to escape, but the massive creature already looms over him. Bleeding heavily, Hyunuk yells at Yuna to activate the warp now, or they will all die, prompting the Major General to curse. Straining intensely, Yuna unleashes a massive glowing magic circle that engulfs the beast in a blinding flash. The monstrous insectoid crashes down, roaring in distress as the magic takes hold. As the swirling energy portal traps the creature, a bloodied Hyunuk smiles intensely, silently praising his partner. Amidst the swirling energy, Sayona watches in horror as Hyunuk stumbles. A memory surfaces of a past ruined city, where he once doubted his own ability to lead. Yuna sharply calls his name and scolds him, demanding to know why he refuses to believe in himself. As he turns away in the memory, the present-day beast roars beneath the collapsing vortex. With his mana completely drained, a bloodied Hyunuk softly apologizes to his comrades. He plunges headfirst into the void, remembering how Yuna once reached out to tap his chest. He recalls her gently telling him to find strength in the eyes of the people who trust him. Suddenly, as his battered body plummets through the debris, a glowing magic portal opens below. Sona screams out a powerful spell, while the rescue team forms a desperate human chain. They successfully grab him, yanking him to safety with a heavy thud. Meanwhile, outside the zone, panicked officials scramble as the media demands answers about the monstrous threat. Inside the command center, the strategy manager receives a grim warning that her position is at serious risk. Furious at being ambushed by her political enemies, she snaps at her subordinates and prepares to make a call. Biting her nails in dread over the dwindling survivors, she suddenly receives an incoming call labeled douchebag. Back inside the ruined cityscape, Sayona tearfully reprimands Hyunuk, admitting she thought he was going to die. He stares blankly, realizing the future has changed and wondering if his past knowledge is now completely worthless. A soldier angrily confronts him for acting alone, demanding to know who he thinks he is. She lectures him that true strategy relies on trusting teammates to execute their promised actions. Remembering her past advice to have faith in his followers, a faint, bloodied smirk crosses his face. As Sonya panics about the impending threat, Hyunuk warmly thanks Yuna for giving him the answer. While the others brace for the boss monster to emerge, he confidently declares he has found a way. He proposes a coordinated lightning attack, emphasizing that everyone needs to work together. Shouting to the entire squad, Hyunuk announces that the absolute key to victory is Private Junmo. Behind his gas mask, the terrified rescue leader stammers in sheer disbelief. Meanwhile, outside the station, a scarred military official steps before the flashing cameras to brief the desperate press. The scarred official loudly announces the immediate deployment of a second rescue team. Furious reporters demand to know why more low-level personnel are being sent to their deaths against a boss monster. Deep inside the station, the massive purple beast tears through the steel tracks with a menacing growl. As the horned creature roars into the rain-swept ruins, a bruised survivor desperately carries a woman to safety. The armored insectoid surveys the crumbling city, preparing to slaughter everything in its path. A security officer screams an order, and two mages instantly engulf the beast in a massive torrent of water. As the tactical team activates an amplifying magic circle, Hyunuk orders Junmo to fire at will. The terrified private unleashes his electric weapon directly into the glowing magical barrier. Crackling yellow lightning courses through the soaked monster, drawing a deafening roar of pain. Trembling violently, Junmo pours on the voltage, while Hyunuk begs him to hold out for their ice magic. Suddenly, a devastating explosion rips through the ruins, sending the masked soldiers flying into the debris. The horrific purple beast breaks free, blasting the entire squad backward with a massive energy wave. Outside, the official silences the outraged reporters by revealing the second team consists of just one person. Inside, a towering man with dark red hair cracks his knuckles, casually praising the exhausted squad for surviving. Stepping firmly into the flooded ruins, the newcomer orders the battered rescue team to go home. Watching Taizan Han, the globally ranked Fist King, step up to the monster, Hyunuk smirks at the sheer presence of true S-class power. Taizan lunges forward with a fiery strike, intercepting the massive creature as it lashes out. Gathering his immense energy, the Fist King coldly warns the squad not to interfere with his prey. Watching from the sidelines, Hyunuk grins. He is deeply relieved that he no longer needs his desperate backup plan. He remembers how, in his past life, Taizan cleared this gate and claimed the legendary Mananan McLear's secret armor. As Taizan drives a fiery kick into the earth, Hyunuk silently thanks him. However, the regressor coldly vows to steal that legendary armor for himself. The monstrous entity charges, but Taizan meets it head-on with a devastating blast of purple energy, declaring his own overwhelming strength. The S-class warrior lunges into the fray. He rides a bright orange energy beam, delivering a massive vertical impact that shatters the ground. Suddenly, the creature retaliates with a terrifying storm of sharp blades. The sheer force of the clash sends the rescue squad recoiling in pain. They scramble frantically through the smoke, screaming as the battlefield completely erupts. Taizan Han realizes the massive creature hasn't taken a single scratch. Acknowledging its sturdiness, the Fist King happily admits the beast is making him competitive. He launches into a blindingly fast assault, trading fiery blows against the monster's immense energy beams. Taizan lands a devastating strike that sends the armored beast hurtling backward. As the cavern rumbles, Hyuna quietly invokes a command to rise. Yuna anxiously channels her mana to heal him, but he reassuringly insists he won't overexert himself. Suddenly, a hostile blade flashes near Yuna, prompting a sharp shout of defiance. Nearby, Taizan laughs maniacally as he relentlessly batters the boss with his glowing weapon. His immense strength cracks its thick armor, and he grapples the beast with fierce determination. With a surge of blue lightning, the S-class hunter delivers a catastrophic blow that shatters the monster's chest. Sensing his moment, Hyunuk activates a skill called Metal Crush and commands a fallen creature to stand. Taizan furiously demands to know what Hyunuk is doing, but the corporal calmly calls the Fist King unethical. Stunned by the audacity, Taizan listens as Hyunuk claims the S-class hunter rudely interrupted their raid. Without warning, Hyunuk unleashes a glowing projectile, sending Taizan into a murderous rage over the sudden trickery. Gripping his mana, Hyunuk fiercely declares that his squad fought to the death, and he refuses to let Taizan steal the final kill. Hyunuk dashes forward with a furious yell, channeling every ounce of his mana. He unleashes a blinding blast of blue lightning just as Taizan's fiery punch connects with the armored monster. The two hunters clash mid-air, their conflicting energies triggering a massive explosion. In the chaos of their struggle, a final strike tears through the dark creature. As Hyunuk lands in the settling dust, a system notification announces that the boss monster is dead. The restrictive dome shatters, and massive crowds of survivors pour out of Seoul Station. A young woman frantically searches the crowd until she finds her mother and pulls her into a tight embrace. The older woman gently pats her daughter's back, apologizing for causing her so much worry. Tears stream down their faces as families reunite all around the devastated station. A news anchor broadcasts the miraculous report that every single civilian inside the event zone survived. Meanwhile, Taizan glares in pure rage as his system window ranks his contribution in second place. Having secured the first place kill, Hyunuk proudly grasps a glowing blue pendant, claiming Mananan McLear's secret armor. Hyunuk examines the hero-grade armor's subspace feature, smirking as he realizes he has secured everything he needs. Suddenly, Taizan angrily demands an explanation, but the corporal just casually absorbs the glowing item. Hyunuk coldly reminds the Fist King that his squad stopped the second wave. Taizan explodes in a fiery rage, screaming that he abandoned 6 months of training for this gate. The masked S-class demands his reward, but Hyunuk refuses to back down. He explains that the system grants 70% of the contribution to whoever secures the final blow. Enveloped in blazing yellow flames, Taizan furiously asks how he will be compensated for his lost time. Hyunuk just smiles darkly, finding it ridiculous for someone to complain to a man who literally reincarnated. As explosive energy erupts between them, Taizan grits his teeth and warns the soldier about crossing him. Hyunuk sharply cuts him off, telling the S-class hero to get over himself. He remembers his past life, lying bloodied and broken among mountains of corpses. Clenching his jaw, he furiously declares that no reward could ever make up for his own desperate struggles. His eyes burning with intense resolve, Taizan screams in pure rage and dashes forward to attack. As Taizan's fiery attack erupts, Hyunuk falls backward through the smoke. Suddenly, a woman's voice screams Taizan's name, demanding to know what he is doing. Lieutenant Colonel Gang Suk-Kam arrives in the ruins to announce the gate has closed. Realizing his perfect timing, Hyunuk smirks and respectfully shakes hands with the bewildered rescue team. Before a shocked Taizan can react, Hyunuk drops down to the street, sharply saluting his commander. Taizan furiously screams for him to come back, leaving Hyuna completely confused. With news helicopters hovering overhead, she warns Taizan that the Blue Flower Guild can no longer protect him. Taizan grits his teeth as a massive teleportation beam strikes the ruined street. Brigadier General Zhang Chol-choi emerges, immediately noticing the furious Fist King. The sly old general spots Hyuna and playfully asks if there is any problem. She insists everything is fine, though his knowing wink suggests otherwise. Deeply annoyed, Hyuna watches as the general surveys the massive crater that used to be Seoul Station. She coldly reminds Taizan that his contract required clearing the gate without inflicting secondary damage. Taizan violently denies destroying the station, revealing he did not even get first place in the raid. Demanding they keep their promise, he storms off into the ruins. Hyuna is left completely stunned, wondering who could possibly steal first place from an S-class. Nearby, Genmo confronts Hyunuk, demanding to know why his power vastly exceeds his official military record. Nearby, Hyuna Yu spots Hyunuk in the distance, clutching her head in frustration as she wonders what on earth is going on. At the same time, Hyunuk feigns shock as he is questioned about his impossible F-class status. Brigadier General Zhang Chul-choi smiles and asks for a private, detailed report, leading the young corporal away across the plaza. Glancing at the older man, Hyunuk knows the general is not someone he can easily deceive. He remembers that Choi is a walking tactical nuclear weapon who survived multiple assassination attempts by the necromancer. Choi stops and demands that Hyunuk reveal exactly what he omitted from his official file. Stomping his foot, Hyunuk carefully fabricates a story about defeating the second elite monster and receiving a sudden achievement message. He explains that this rare system instantly boosted his telekinetic limit to 17 kilograms and granted him new combat skills. Choi muses that an achievement system is just as uncommon as a quest. Grinning as he accepts the plausible excuse, a strange sensation washes over Hyunuk as the general notes he can no longer be considered an F-class. Hyunuk wonders if he is being scouted as Choi praises his work and offers him any item he desires. Feigning hesitation, Hyunuk smirks and admits there is one specific weapon he wants, though it will not be easy to hand over. When the general playfully asks what it is, Hyunuk boldly requests Choi's treasured hero-grade item, Fail Not. Choi's eyes flash with intense lightning before he bursts into laughter, genuinely impressed by the corporal's sheer guts. General Choi taps Hyunuk's chest, promising to discuss the weapon after granting the corporal a special promotion to sergeant. As the laughing general flies away, Hyunuk breathes a sigh of relief, glad he successfully changed the subject to stay hidden. A few days later back at the barracks, Hyunuk sits on his bed, frustrated that digesting the hero-grade secret armor is taking so long. His eager squadmates interrupt his rest, begging him to skip physical conditioning and coach them in actual combat despite his injuries, as they promise to catch up to his level. Hyunuk looks at his squad and realizes he gained something vital from the recent chaos. He remembers Junmo's bravery against the boss monster, and Haina's advice to have faith in the people around him. Suddenly, Private Min Tae-on marches into the room reporting back for duty after recovering at the military hospital. Realizing his comrades are more important than future loot, Hyunuk immediately pulls the startled tanker into a tight hug. He quickly covers up his sudden affection, loudly declaring that he is just happy. On arrived right on time for training. Looking at his eager squad, Hyunuk decides he can trust them to watch his back in this life and orders them out to train. He knows he must prepare them for the wave, an impending disaster where explosive gate outbreaks will swarm Seoul with monsters. It is a horrific future where dragons will burn the city to ashes, and Hyunuk is the only one who knows it is coming. Engulfed in fiery energy, Hyunuk wonders if he can stop the catastrophic wave by himself. As a discharged soldier reports back for duty, Hyunuk knows he needs their help to survive. He greets his returning squadmates warmly, praising them for arriving exactly on time. The young men gather playfully in the classroom, completely unaware of what awaits them. Hyunuk realizes that only by pushing them to their absolute limits can he save them all. One recruit panics, realizing this advanced training center is strictly off limits to low-ranking scrubs. Hyunuk grabs the man's face, his eyes flashing as he reminds them they begged for real experience. He shoves Junmo to the dirt, demanding to know why they are scared when they all leveled up. Sighing, Hyunuk promises to back them up, instantly bringing a hopeful smile to his comrade's face. But as the massive gate opens, the squad trembles in sheer terror at the monster zone. Hyunuk merely grins, shoves them into the restricted area, and seals the heavy metal door. Ignoring their desperate screams for mercy, he sadistically declares that their crash course has begun. Later at the mart, two female soldiers spot him. Whispering in surprise that the famous F-class hero looks so scrawny, Hyunuk scratches his ear, casually instructing his squad to load up on refreshments for the trainees. Suddenly, Yuna Seo confronts him in the aisle, questioning why he isn't doing his individual training. Nearby, other soldiers bicker and stare, oblivious to the quiet confrontation unfolding in the mart. Yuna acknowledges his recent extraordinary achievements but coldly states that she knows he is hiding something. Hyunuk plays dumb, but Yuna presses closer, accusing him of acting like he knows the future. He nervously denies it, saved only when a sudden argument between two nearby sergeants interrupts them. Yuna glances away just as the intercom blares, ordering Hyunuk to report to the battalion commander immediately. Noting the convenient timing, she glares at him and vows to keep a close eye on his movements. Stepping outside, Hyunuk breathes a sigh of relief, but wonders why he is being summoned before his promotion ceremony. Hearing muffled shouts about a suicide mission through the door, Hyunuk enters and gasps in shock at the men inside. Brigadier General Jung Kul-choi steps forward with a stern expression, explaining that a red gate has opened in Salim. The general reveals the Blue Flower Guild took the raid, a disastrous mission ending with knights being brutally impaled. Inside the blood-red gate, the Blue Flower Knights violently turn their blades on one another. A desperate guild member begs them to stop, fleeing from his own armored comrades. He screams in terror as dark-clawed hands drag him into the Crimson Shadows. With the entire strategy team annihilated, the Bloody Gate is officially designated as a Level 3 trouble. Back in the office, Hyunuk is deeply confused, knowing this disaster never happened in his past life. The officers explain it is a clear-or-die zombie dungeon restricted to 30 low-level players. Hearing about the undead horde, Hyunuk immediately suspects the dreaded necromancer is behind this anomaly. The officers note the military has no official jurisdiction to intervene. However, the general smiles coldly, telling Corporal Lee that he is the perfect person to handle it quietly. Resolving to face the necromancer himself, Hyunuk loudly accepts the dangerous challenge, but he silently decides to extort them first, complaining that his current weapons are far too weak. He boldly demands General Choi's treasured Fail Not, a legendary one-shot arrow that never misses. Since he can control metal, Hyunuk knows he can easily retrieve the supposedly one-time use weapon. The general glares at his audacity, then grins, warning that this is a strict deal, not a favor. Unfazed, Hyunuk merely smirks, noting that high risks always bring high rewards. His eyes glowing with quiet intensity, Hyunuk formally accepts the massive Red Gate challenge. He demands the legendary Fail Not to guarantee his success, leaving General Choi momentarily stunned. The old man quickly recovers with a broad smile, warning him of the deadly stakes. Unfazed, Hyunuk merely matches his menacing grin. He knows Choi is using him to humiliate Jae-hyuk Yu, the Blue Flower Guild master. If an ordinary soldier clears the impossible gate, it proves the military's absolute superiority. Choi eagerly grants the weapon but slyly postpones Hyunuk's promotion, sparking a flash of sharp defiance. Refusing to be played, Hyunuk demands an entirely new reward for the suicide mission. The amused general agrees, and Hyunuk shouts his thanks before marching out. He returns to the training room, finding his blood-splattered squad standing over a defeated creature. Min Tae-on pants heavily, boasting that C-class training is no longer a challenge for them. Hyunuk flashes a dark grin at his bruised men and loudly announces their very first solo deployment. Min Tae-on's exhausted confidence instantly shatters into pure shock, and 2 days later, the squad rattles through the Dark City in a military transport. Inside the transport, an officer distributes wholly powered ammo for the zombie dungeon, warning of heavy recoil. He declares that this is no longer a drill and orders everyone to stay alert. Nearby, one armored soldier asks if the legendary Fail Not was brought, and another smirks in confirmation. A glowing blue crystal activates on his wrist. Arriving at the Salim Redgate base camp, the soldiers are ordered to disembark. Hyunuk is told to attend the pre-deployment strategy briefing. He leaves Junmo in charge of the squad, who immediately notice the tense atmosphere. The Blue Flower Guild Knights scoff at the military team, calling the ordinary soldiers weaklings. One knight accidentally mentions a secret retrieval operation, and is quickly silenced by his superior. Overhearing this, Hyunuk wonders what they mean by a retrieval operation. The stern knight declares they will abandon the AMT soldiers as soon as they enter the gate. He coldly states that the weaklings will just have to protect their own lives. Hyunuk enters a restricted meeting room, asking if a briefing was supposed to happen. He finds strategy manager Haina Yu waiting, who smugly says she knew he would come. She accuses him of hiding his F-class status, but Hyunuk calmly replies he never asked for her card. Hana cuts him off, demanding the military team not interrupt the guild. She orders him to stay out of everything, making Hyunuk realize they are seen as disposable. Unfazed, Hyunuk reminds her that the army has equal access rights to the gate. Haina mocks him, asking if an F-class really thinks he can take down the boss. Hyunuk challenges her, asking if she is terrified that his squad might actually succeed. Haina simply lets out a soft scoff of amusement. Her soft scoff erupts into echoing laughter. She sarcastically asks if he expects to get lucky again like at Seoul Station. Hyunuk steps closer, coldly informing her that it was never luck. He glares into her eyes, asking if she truly has a death wish. Haina flinches, starting to suggest his team enter first before stopping herself. Instead, she announces that 3 top prospects are joining the raid, ordering him to stay out of their way. Hyunuk realizes there is a hidden motive behind this retrieval operation. He calls her Haina, boldly proposing a bet. If his team defeats the boss first, she must grant him a favor. Hana smirks, demanding his life if she wins. Hyunuk instantly accepts, silently vowing to take whatever she is hiding inside. The Blue Flower Guild lines up at the swirling red portal. They raise their shields, planning to rush the entry zone before the AMT soldiers can follow. With a rush of energy, the elite guild vanishes into the gate. Minutes later, the AMT squad stands ready, and Min-tae nervously insists he is fine. Their commander orders them to control their breath and focus. Bracing their riot shields, the soldiers finally step into the red vortex. As they cross the threshold, a horrifying sight greets them. Hyunuk's eye widens in shock as a monster savagely tears into a man's flesh. One soldier desperately silences another as they witness the carnage. The elite Blue Flower members are already being slaughtered, screaming as they are ripped apart. A bloodied figure roars through the red-lit hall, leaving a surviving knight trembling in absolute terror. Another armored fighter falls to the ground, fatally wounded. Jumo points forward, leading his AMT rescue team past the groaning, bleeding knights. A spiky, monstrous figure shrieks as the tactical squad marches deeper into the ominous red landscape. A demonic skull roars from the shadows, causing the advancing soldiers to gulp nervously. The skeletal creature erupts in a burst of crimson energy, glaring down at the armored squad. Juno announces the AMT raid squad and orders his men to fire at will. The monster flinches as the team confidently steps onto the blood-soaked floor. The horned beast lets out another menacing growl, and 2 soldiers scream in sudden terror. A massive skull-faced monster finally emerges to confront the squad. The squad unleashes a relentless barrage, but the monstrous king blocks the fiery blasts. Shocked by the barrier, Junmo desperately orders Taeyong to strike now. A weapon's iron sight locks directly onto the massive red monster. Sometime earlier on a desert training ground, Taeyong nervously asks a question. He points out that ordinary firearms are virtually useless against monsters. Jumo calmly agrees that their bullets cannot deal fatal wounds. He explains that against high-ranking bosses, even holy ammunition feels like rubber. However, he reveals that while zombies lack sight, their acute hearing can be completely scrambled by gunfire. The squad realizes this deafening tactic will blind the monsters to their presence. But a soldier nervously wonders what happens if the undead possess other working senses. Junmo coldly replies that they would all be infected and butcher each other in a bloody hellscape. Back in the blood-red dungeon, Junmo screams for Taeyong to fire. The E-class sniper immediately pulls the trigger. A massive barrage of sniper rounds slams directly into the monstrous zombie king. Suddenly, explosive magical grenades land right at the tactical squad's feet. Min Tae-on, the E-class tanker, braces his riot shield as a massive explosion engulfs the cavern. Through the smoke, the skull-face monster simply absorbs the blast. Min Tae struggles to hold the line against the blinding flare of dark magic. A terrifying, oppressive aura erupts from the zombie king's horned crown. The soldiers freeze in horror as a colossal wave of black smoke swallows the sky. The skeletal ruler vanishes and reappears in a flash of crimson energy. All around them, the slaughtered elites rise as screaming, bloodthirsty zombies. The tactical squad braces themselves as the armored horde charges forward. Desperate to maintain their deafening barrage, Junmo orders his men to reload immediately. Glowing rifles magically float into the air, snapping fresh magazines into place. Staring down the approaching nightmare, the squad prepares to pull the trigger. Gunfire erupts as the AMT squad unleashes a desperate barrage into the approaching horde. Muzzle flashes illuminate the bloody onslaught, and Gaunjin Kim notices a rare-grade item drop amidst the chaos. Above the slaughter, a massive shadowy figure watches the soldiers struggle down the desolate path. A demonic skull roars as dark energy sweeps across the red landscape, sending glowing rifles raining down. The men collapse in trembling exhaustion, wondering why the boss monster's name appeared broken. Junmo barks at them to stay focused, completely unaware of the snake-wrapped figure watching from a ledge above. The fanged watcher grins at his hissing serpent, amused by the squad's arrival. Elsewhere, Yuna Seo leads her combat platoon through the desolate ruins, deeply unnerved by the total absence of zombies. Suddenly, an unfamiliar metal shifts behind her and she immediately pivots with sparking blue energy to strike. As Yuna's squad advances through the red-lit forest, her sparking blade stops inches from a terrified man's neck. The robed figure throws his hands up, begging for his life and swearing he is human. The soldiers stare in disbelief at the lone survivor as he frantically begs for water and food. Between frantic bites, Taesop reveals that the Gwing group sent a secret letter to all major guilds. They promised enormous support to whichever guild assists them. Yuna listens quietly, realizing that the legendary Spear of Achilles is hidden inside this very gate. Taesop explains that the grandson failed the first raid even while wielding the guild's powerful symbol. Yuna finally understands why the other squad was so violently hostile during a cooperative mission. Nearby, Min Tae turns away and quietly insists to his comrades that nothing is wrong. Meanwhile, the mysterious snake-like watcher observes their peaceful gathering from afar. Disappointed that they are merely chatting, he smiles in the darkness and decides to make things fun. Suddenly, Yuna's radar flares as she senses a massive, rapid surge of strange metals approaching. The watcher bares his sharp teeth, unleashing a massive horde of armed monstrosities. Yuna shouts a frantic warning as the deadly metallic signatures multiply completely out of control. Yuna realizes why the other guilds were so hostile, just as her scanner detects a massive surge of strange metals. High above, the mysterious man in the suit grows bored of their chatting and decides to make the game much more interesting. The metallic signatures on Yuna's radar multiply wildly, and as they breach 120, she screams that they are in immediate danger. She immediately orders the squad to execute Plan C, calling out for Min Tae and the Minjae. The soldiers frantically unpack their camouflage bags, pulling out red metallic spheres. They begin aggressively doping with mana and health potions, chugging the cans as fast as possible. Hyunuk barks urgent instructions at Junmo, ignoring the confusion of the others around him. The hooded survivor demands to know what Plan C is, only to freeze in terror at a terrifying rumble. A horde of skeletal monsters burst through the red mist, roaring for blood. The survivor watches in shock as a massive cloud of glowing orbs is scattered into the air. Surrounded by the floating lights, the squad leader orders the entire AMT squad to evacuate the zone immediately. Watching from the shadows, the snake-like man scoffs, summoning even more massive, shadowy beasts. Standing alone amidst the glowing traps, the armored soldier lets out a calm, exhausted sigh. As the platoon sprints away, a soldier worries that abandoning one man is practically a death sentence. A soldier quickly reassures her that Corporal Lee planned this himself, and he never fails. Back in the trap zone, Hyunuk steps directly into the path of the charging horde. He immediately breaks into a sprint. The massive wolf beasts are lured deeper into the red energy field. The monstrous creatures snap at his heels as he weaves through the snare. Suddenly, projectiles strike the beasts' heads. Hyunuk detonates the trap, unleashing a massive surge of blue lightning and crushing red energy. The explosive blasts instantly shred the charging werewolf warriors. Watching from afar, the snake-draped watcher sees the burning bodies rain down. He realizes the bait used holy iron beads, but coldly notes the loud blast will attract more undead. Deep in the dungeon, massive skull-crowned figures and armored zombies hear the blast and turn. With a deafening roar, the horde surges forward, while Hyunuk stands silently over his shattered pursuers. Suddenly, he senses a completely different grade of metal approaching and peers through the red fog. Amidst the distant explosions, the snake-draped watcher's eyes glow red. Wondering if this lone survivor is the legend, back with the squad, a young soldier's heart pounds wildly in disbelief at the sheer scale of the blast. As more beasts lunge forward, Hyunuk silently navigates deeper into the perilous, thorny wasteland. Hyunuk takes a brutal hit as the skeletal wolves slam into him from all sides. Activating a skill chain, he pushes back, blood dripping from a deep gash on his forehead. He quickly gathers crackling blue lightning in his hands as a fresh pack of snarling beasts emerges. Watching from afar, the snake-draped watcher smirks, assuming Hyunuk has exhausted his holy energy and iron beads. Suddenly, the watcher's eyes flash red in surprise as thousands of sharp metal shards rain down. As the monstrous horde charges, the watcher realizes these are the shattered fragments of the exploded beads. Hyunuk thrusts his hand forward, channeling his remaining lightning into the fragments to unleash a devastating steel rain. The magnetized shrapnel tears through the charging beasts, shredding the monsters in a massive energy barrage. A colossal explosion rocks the wasteland, summoning a shadowy, dragon-like entity and screaming skulls of dark energy. A demonic horned creature surges from the blast, forcing the watcher to pause his observation. Miles away, the blast lights up the sky, prompting Jeongjin to panic and ask why the platoon isn't escaping. Yunha grabs the panicked thief, revealing that their true plan was always to lure the undead away from Hyunuk. As monstrous figures continue to rise from the destruction, the Watcher oversees the chaotic battlefield. Realizing the humans never intended to abandon Hyunuk and actually planned to win, the Watcher grins in pure excitement. Watching Hyunuk stand victorious among the slaughtered monsters, the Watcher breaks into triumphant laughter. He marvels at how effortlessly this strange human navigates the horde of the dead. Checking his fading potion timers, Hyunuk steels himself for the true fight. The Watcher readies a glowing spear beside his monstrous serpent, eager to taste the boy's blood. He steps forward, his fangs bared in a confident, murderous smile. Staring him down, Hyunuk demands to know if this man is the legendary necromancer. The Watcher flinches violently, his red eyes widening in shock at the name. His shock instantly morphs into vampiric rage. The creature grips his spear tighter, his giant snake roaring as he threatens to slaughter the boy. Unfazed by the killing intent, Hyunuk firmly repeats his question. The Watcher snarls, demanding to know how a mere human could possibly know of that existence. Noticing the fallen zombies are no longer resurrecting, Hyunuk realizes this creature is just a subordinate. Humiliated and furious, the Watcher unleashes his dark energy and thrusts his weapon. Hyunuk immediately lunges forward to meet the lethal strike head-on. The Watcher unleashes a devastating dark slash, but Hyunuk braces himself for the impact. He intercepts the massive strike, leaving his glowing-eyed opponent completely furious. Hyunuk realizes that without his newly fused indomitable steel physique, his arm would have been severed instantly. A violent energy whip sends Hyunuk skidding backward through the chaotic red storm. The enraged Watcher lunges forward, casually deflecting Hyunuk's glowing throwing knives with his spear. Hyunuk charges back in as the massive spiky snaketail looms over him. He swings his electrified arm, unleashing a sudden burst of glowing holy shards around his enemy. The intense speed of the clash leaves Hyunuk bleeding from his forehead and gasping for breath. Shielded by his scaled beast, the Watcher realizes this intruder is far beyond a normal level restriction. Hyunuk glares back, while the Watcher furiously demands to know how he entered the gate. Suddenly, the glowing holy power bead shards embed themselves in the Watcher's hand, burning his skin. Watching the holy magic burn his foe, Hyunuk identifies him as a vampire. He remembers that these cannibalistic players belong to the demon groups destined to wipe out the AMT. Completely enraged by the pain, the Watcher scatters the holy shards with a brutal swing. He tightly grips his dark weapon, threatening to sever Hyunuk's limbs until he talks. Staring down the blade, Hyunuk recognizes the legendary Spear of Achilles, knowing its true power will render his steel armor useless. Hyunuk clenches his fist, knowing a single misstep means death. With his potion effect dropping below 2 minutes, he vows to finish this fast. The Watcher furiously lunges with his glowing weapon, summoning a massive snake to strike. The brutal electric attack sends Hyunuk falling backward. Using his metal control, Hyunuk hurls his electric spear, clashing violently against the beast. The impact leaves him bleeding as the vampire mocks his useless tricks. A torrent of red energy forces Hyunuk back, making him realize his ranged bead shards cannot pierce the giant snake. With projectiles blocked and the legendary spear making melee impossible, he is completely cornered. The enraged monster dashes forward, roaring about Hyunuk's insolence. Hyunuk barely dodges the shadowy blast, smirking as he decides to use his trump card early. He proudly declares himself a soldier. Stepping back, he calmly asks if the monster has ever served in the military, deeply confusing his enemy. Suddenly, the Watcher looks down and spots a claymore mine planted right at his feet. Hyunuk grins menacingly, realizing his explosive trap is perfectly set. Meanwhile, a horde of armored figures races wildly through the blood-red forest. Watching the undead horde pass, Yuna's squad fears Hyunuk is dead and urges everyone to escape. But Jummo firmly insists that Corporal Lee hasn't failed, explaining they're waiting for a signal. He remembers Hyunuk ordering him to plant a claymore in his back, warning that its explosion would be his last resort. Back in the forest, Hyunuk seizes his opening and fiercely clicks the detonator. The Watcher realizes the trap a second too late as a massive thermobaric explosion engulfs him and his giant snake. The blast shatters the area, leaving the vampire entangled and desperately fighting off his own thrashing beast. Bleeding but furious, the Watcher screams that a mere bomb cannot kill a chosen one. But Hyunuk is already moving, lunging through the smoke to unleash a blinding, glowing blue arrow. The immense energy strikes the vampire squarely, violently blasting him backward into the dirt. The vampire screams in agony as the flames consume him. Moving with a speed the monster cannot even track, Hyunuk drives a brutal punch forward. The vampire desperately grips the glowing arrow embedded in him, realizing the claymore was only a distraction for this unblockable attack. Smirking through the smoke, Hyunuk coldly promises not to kill him yet, declaring that it is his turn to ask questions. Meanwhile, the undead horde continues its relentless charge through the dark forest. In the distance, Yangjin urges Yuna to run, insisting that the raid squad cannot hold the zombies back. He assumes Hyunuk is already dead, but Yuna fiercely insists that the corporal has not failed. She anxiously waits for a signal. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the canyon, and the soldiers realize the claymore has finally detonated. Yunha gasps in shock as Youngjin points out that this must be the signal she was waiting for. Smiling selfishly, the thief suggests they hide and eat their rations until another rescue team arrives. Yuna glares at him with pure rage. She demands to know how he can laugh when that explosion means her comrade might be dead, and the rest of the AMT squad glares at him in silent agreement. As Zhangjin stammers that the living must survive and hide, a sudden impact violently cuts him off. The environment around them begins to severely glitch and fracture, forcing the soldiers to advance cautiously through the crumbling red ruins. Yuna's soldiers are terrified as they realize zombies are appearing around them. Undead creatures materialize around them, their bodies violently forming from the glitching red environment. The squad advances stealthily through the crumbling ruins, signaling for absolute silence. A massive horde of emaciated zombies emerges from the shadows. As Yuna leads her team through the debris, sudden footsteps force them to halt. The cowardly thief Youngjin immediately breaks rank and sprints away in terror. His sudden movement alerts the nearby zombies, and the soldiers watch in fury. As the screaming horde charges forward, Yuna orders the raid squad to open fire. Elsewhere, Hyunuk uses his ability to firmly grip the arrow embedded in the Watcher's arm. The vampire screams in agony as Hyunuk twists the shaft. Hyunuk smiles coldly, promising that he will not kill him right away. The Watcher laughs at the weapon, but Hyunuk calmly notes that the bleeding will be fatal. The creature becomes enraged, demanding to know how much Hyunuk knows about him. The Watcher screams again as Hyunuk tightens his grip on the glowing arrow. Taking control, Hyunuk demands to know the vampire's connection to the Gang Group's grandson. Hearing the name of his sponsor, the Watcher violently flinches. The Watcher furiously declares the sponsor is just prey, but Hyunuk simply smirks at his brutal honesty. He then drops the real question, asking what the vampire knows about the necromancer. The Watcher laughs, warning that the necromancer can transform into anyone, even a beloved family member. Instantly, Hyunuk strikes him with a floating knife, coldly ordering the monster to leave his family alone. Realizing the vampire is just stalling for recognition, Hyunuk asks if he has ever actually seen his master. He points out that a truly cautious being would never reveal his intentions to a mere subordinate. The Watcher trembles with furious rage as Hyunuk mocks him for being nothing but an obsessive stalker. Hyunuk casually claims he knows the necromancer better, since they used to hunt each other. The vampire vehemently denies this, screaming that his master has not even awakened yet. Using the opening, Hyunuk brutally stabs him and steals the spear of Achilles. Internally, Hyunuk wonders why a monster would show such fierce loyalty to an unawakened boy. Changing tactics, he asks how the Watcher bypassed the Blue Flower Guild outside. The vampire glares, confused, as Hyunuk demands to know how he entered a red gate that Hyunuk himself opened. Stunned that an individual can control gates, the Watcher declares that the second upheaval is about to begin. Hyunuk blasts in with blue lightning, but the terrain suddenly begins to glitch and transform. Hyunuk mercilessly strikes the vampire. But as he catches a glowing arrow, a system warning announces the creation of the Zombie King's castle. Finding himself in a desolate red forest, Hyunuk realizes this is the second upheaval. The Watcher gloats that his red gate is finally complete. Across the battlefield, terrified AMT soldiers are suddenly ambushed by bloodied zombies. Deep within a grand hall, a crowned figure unleashes a massive surge of red energy. Skeletal horrors and glitching fleshy masses manifest, unleashing glowing eyes and looming beasts. A horde of undead gathers under a purple flash, bowing to a massive red-cloaked figure. As gruesome monsters lunge at screaming soldiers, the true ruler of life and death reveals himself. The Watcher taunts an enraged Hyunuk, vowing to sacrifice the human soldiers to feed Baron Samedi, the Zombie King. In the dark corridors, the rescue team is overwhelmed by lunging horrors. Two startled soldiers watch in confusion as strange egg-like statues suddenly materialize in the red light. Suddenly, a torrent of red energy explodes through the chamber as a crowned skeletal figure materializes. The two startled soldiers raise their rifles, watching in horror as the Zombie King's glowing eyes pierce the darkness. Baron Samedi unleashes a blinding flash of light, commanding the emaciated corpses around them to turn. A soldier recoils in sheer terror as he realizes these newly awakened zombies can actually see them. He desperately opens fire, trying to hold back the massive wave of undead flooding the Grand Hall. Realizing they are completely spotted, Junmo orders the raid squad to retreat while he provides cover. However, the monstrous zombie king simply flares with dark purple energy, sending his skeletal horde forward. A devastating wave of red magic crashes into the building, violently throwing the terrified soldiers through the debris. A golden grenade detonates on the blood-stained floor, and someone desperately screams Junmo's name through the smoke. Junmo furiously yells at Min-tae and Min-jae to escape, warning that their shields cannot hold out much longer. The soldiers unleash a chaotic barrage of gunfire against the charging purple-eyed horde. Tears stream down their faces as they confess they lack the confidence to gun down their own turned comrades. With the blood-splattered zombies closing in, 2 more glowing grenades fall directly into the charging mass. The grenades detonate with a massive blast, shaking the tactical officers. Inside the red-lit building, 2 soldiers refuse to abandon their captain, rushing back into the fray. Junmo stares in shock at his returning men. He immediately orders a full retreat as the glowing undead close in. The Watcher gloats that Nako Castle is complete, daring Hyonuk to stop the zombies from escaping. Hyonuk collapses onto the blood-red floor as glowing weapons fly past. He scrambles to his feet and dashes out of the crumbling building, hearing the distant explosions. Speeding through the distorted landscape, he wonders if the blasts came from Junmo's position. Jumo remembers telling his men to hide once his final explosives were triggered. His subordinate had nervously gulped at the grim order. Jumo had tried to name his successor, but the young soldier interrupted. Smiling, the soldier demanded that his captain come back alive. The memory brings a subtle smirk to Junmo's scarred face. He tells his squad to wait right there while he holds the line. Elsewhere, Hyonuk draws his glowing blue daggers and sprints forward. He tears through the red-tinged forest as a massive undead army gathers before the new castle. Cursing in frustration, Hyonuk dashes toward the front lines. Ignoring the massive mana drain, he unleashes the Spear of Achilles. He lunges straight into the charging horde of glowing-eyed zombies. Hyonuk charges into the rumbling horde, telling the shrieking skeletal creatures to be quiet. He fiercely battles the red-eyed monsters, remembering his promise to return. A massive crash clears a path to a desolate, crimson-lit hall where the newly awakened zombie king stands. Baron Samedi radiates dark purple energy, but his system window warns that his advent ritual has been interrupted. The demonic king grits his teeth in rage and swiftly flies out of the dark building. Meanwhile, the retreating AMT soldiers dash through the red-tinged ruins, questioning what Private Yongjin Kim is carrying. The E-class thief panics, admitting he stole the large object because it seemed important to the zombie king. Just as grotesque creatures ambush them, a dark figure rapidly strikes the monsters, but a red-skinned beast lands a powerful blow. Jumo yells for them to fall back as Tae-young shoots 3 zombies down, the squad engaging in desperate close-quarters combat. Blasts of gunfire erupt through the narrow hallway as a soldier announces the C4 installation is complete. Jumo orders Min-tae to put his shields up, and the tanker bursts through the doorway. Min-tae holds the line against the frantic, blood-splattered horde as Junmo orders them to open fire. A violent explosion engulfs the corridor as the soldiers breach the fiery opening. The detonated C4 erupts in a massive blast. A powerful shockwave sweeps through the area, leaving the injured squad buried under the red debris. Jumo coughs through the haze, asking if everyone is alive, and the battered soldiers proudly confirm that all are accounted for. Relief washes over the squad as they confirm the zombies' entryway is completely blocked. However, Junmo quickly realizes they are trapped inside the ruins with a rapidly dwindling oxygen supply. Suddenly, the thick wall cracks and shatters inward, sending the soldiers diving for cover. Through the flying debris, a terrifying horned figure steps into the red-lit rubble. Baron Samedi, the newly awakened zombie king, glares down at them with glowing purple eyes. The monstrous being stretches his thick neck and smiles, making the hardened soldiers shudder in absolute fear. Intense purple energy radiates from the demon's armor as the squad raises their shields in alarm. Samedi laughs mockingly, asking the terrified humans if they are a bit too late. Just then, a glowing spear tears through the haze as Junmo desperately calls out for Hyonuk. The zombie king unleashes a massive shockwave, tearing the ground apart beneath the squad. Samedi bares his razor-sharp teeth in a menacing grin, reveling in the brutal destruction. As the battered soldiers cower in the chaos, Samedi roars a command to stop right there. The demon's glowing eyes lock onto them, but one of the soldiers looks past the monster and smiles intensely. Covered in blood and injuries, Hyonuk furiously demands to know who dares to mess with his comrades. He screams at the glowing-eyed demon, declaring that he is the only one allowed to bully his squad. The soldiers stare in shock at his sudden arrival. Hyonuk realizes his mana is dangerously low, and he still has no idea how to defeat the demon. He plummets through the air with his spear, wondering if Samedi has a ranged attack. Hanging from the crumbling structure, Hyonuk watches the giant demon grit its teeth. He stares in shock, wondering why the creature refuses to strike. Meanwhile, Junmo urgently orders Gyeongjin and Taeyong to unpack their supply crates. Hyonuk spots a glowing, glitching object on a pedestal, and realizes it might be holding the monster back. Suddenly, Samedi unleashes a massive, earth-shattering stomp. Hyonuk looks up as the terrifying shadow bears down on him. Gritting his bloodied teeth, Hyonuk launches an electrified strike. The horned demon immediately powers up, crushing the collapsing red structures. Seeing Hyunok struggle, the squad furiously hurls their remaining mana potions toward him. Down in the tunnel, Samedi brutally counters, slamming a glowing fist into his opponent. Burning his remaining energy, Hyunok reactivates the Spear of Achilles and unleashes a devastating red slash. Junmo screams for Mintei to raise his shield just as the shockwave engulfs them. Mintei braces with everything he has as the violent explosion throws them backward. Amidst the chaos, Hyunok snatches a glowing blue mana can from the air. The dust settles and Junmo desperately checks on Mintei, who gasps that he is still alive. Hyunok chugs the Monostar potion and lets out a ferocious scream as his energy returns. Taunting the glowing-eyed zombie king, he propels himself forward through the red chamber with his spear. Baron Samedi retaliates, unleashing a barrage of explosive energy orbs that tear through the arena. Hyunok strikes back, but quickly realizes that carelessly attacking the monster's barrier will shatter every weapon he has. As Samedi erupts in a storm of dark tendrils, Hyunok deflects the blows, trapped in a desperate stalemate. As explosions rock the shielding soldiers, Hyunok knows he cannot retreat to find a weak point. He desperately scans the roaring, incomplete monster for a visible flaw, grimacing under the relentless assault. Meanwhile, an argument breaks out among the squad as a soldier demands to know where Zhang got an unidentified dungeon sword. Zhang argues that they will all be wiped out if they do nothing, knowing Corporal Li is trapped protecting them. Seizing an opening during the chaotic clash, a squadmate urgently orders Zhang to strike. As the monstrous king delivers another devastating blow, sending the fighters plummeting down a vertical shaft, Zhang makes his move. Plunging downward, he drives the stolen blade straight into a glowing heart, making the towering demon groan in sudden agony. Baron Samedi stumbles into the rubble, while the surviving AMT soldiers quickly converge around Yana. Hyunok urgently calls out to the raid squad, demanding to know who is still alive. Standing near the glowing blade lodged in the fleshy mass, a soldier shouts that they survived. Hearing their voices, Hyunok lets out a heavy sigh of relief. Suddenly, the towering demon collapses violently as purple energy crackles around his horned head. A strange glowing purple organ floats amidst the dark, spiky ruins. Hyunok stares in shock, realizing the fleshy objects scattered around are actually a heart and lungs. Baron Samedi unleashes a deafening roar, clutching a purple orb as explosive energy erupts. The squad members tightly cover their ears in agony against the brutal shockwave. Massive purple energy flares outward as the zombie king's dangerous descent violently accelerates. Hyunok grins fiercely, realizing these scattered organs function exactly like ancient Egyptian canopic jars. Knowing the floating heart must contain the monster's soul, he seizes his chance to strike. As the demon pulses with terrifying power, the sniper Taeyong locks onto the target. A tracking arrow shatters the purple barrier, plunging straight into the swirling energy mass. However, as his monstrous body rapidly recovers, Baron Samedi flashes a wide, menacing grin. As the demon unleashes his dark tendrils, Zhang plunges through the red-lit ruins. He furiously yells that this is the real attack, readying his glowing weapon. Suddenly, a brutal strike catches the falling thief, sending blood flying across his face. Ignoring the pain, Hyunok hurls the Spear of Achilles, violently piercing the monster's skull. Baron Samedi erupts in a massive burst of purple energy, letting out a deafening roar. Hyunok and the squad instantly launch a coordinated skill chain to press their advantage. Realizing his mana pool is completely empty, a bloodied Zhang knows they are doomed. The glowing spear continues to tear through the thrashing zombie king. The unhealable wound burns deeply, and the massive creature screams in agony. The squad desperately tries to maintain their assault, but their exhausted bodies refuse to respond. Seizing the opening, the demon's dark tendrils violently smash into the vulnerable hunters. Bleeding and desperate, Taeyong raises his sniper rifle for one final impossible shot. Suddenly, a massive force slams into them, but a shield intercepts the deadly blow. Taeyong screams at Mintei, demanding to know what he is doing. Mintei braces his newly deployed magic shield, desperately protecting the sniper from the crushing red energy. His boots skid across the floor as the glowing barrier deflects a barrage of dark tentacles. Through the smoke, the armored soldier checks if Taeyong is unharmed. Bleeding from his forehead, Taeyong stares in shock and asks where that defensive skill came from. As the winged demon looms overhead, Mintei realizes his rapid growth in the dungeon has finally paid off. Blocking the zombie king's earlier strike pushed him to level 20, granting him this magic shield. He proudly announces his new power, but Taeyong fiercely scolds him for testing an unknown skill in combat. When Mintei nervously explains he only wanted to protect him, the sniper's anger softens. Taeyong gently pats the soldier's helmet, reminding him that protecting the squad is his own responsibility. He tells the blushing guard to save his thanks until they survive the towering monstrosity before them. The demon is struck by multiple arrows, crying out in pain from the relentless damage. The incomplete spirit of death begins to rapidly disintegrate Baron Samedi's body, causing the monster to shriek in agony. Unable to control his collapsing vessel, the zombie king thrashes wildly, unleashing a chaotic purple shockwave. The sheer force of the dying creature's rampage sends the tactical squad tumbling through the crumbling halls. Taeyong watches the devastating retaliatory strikes and realizes the beast is trying to take them all down with it. He immediately orders the squad to lay down suppressing fire to blind the thrashing monster. Baron Samedi roars through the barrage, wildly firing red energy blasts in every direction. The squad scatters into the ruins, launching a desperate distraction operation to buy time for Hyunuk to recover his mana. Baron Samedi smashes the ground, scattering the soldiers as Junmo pledges to buy time. Hyunuk watches helplessly, shocked by his squad's selfless determination. The dying zombie king roars, unleashing a massive shockwave. Taeyong slides through the rubble to distract the monster as Hyunuk reaches 12%. Hyunuk grits his teeth at 19%. Watching a soldier scream he is out of ammo, the massive demon immediately turns on the defenseless squad. Refusing to let them die, Hyunuk leaps forward, shouting to draw the monster's aggro. He surges with blinding speed, wrapped in crackling blue lightning. He knows he must destroy the final canopic organ to win. Realizing the demonic essence is tied to its eyes, Hyunuk screams in fierce determination, preparing to strike the fatal blow. He clashes brutally with the thrashing beast amidst a storm of energy. Summoning Sir Tristan's Fail Not, he unleashes an ethereal blue spear that unconditionally pierces the demon's head. The impact triggers a blinding eruption, sending the squad flying into the debris. Bleeding but defiant, Hyunuk powers up, mocking the pathetic king. He drives a devastating punch into the creature as his cloud sword absorbs a massive energy surge. The zombie king is swallowed by a violent vortex of purple energy. A final shockwave crashes through the ruins, burying everything in jagged debris. As the dust clears around the braced soldiers, a system notification congratulates Hyunuk on defeating the zombie king. The exhausted soldiers stare in disbelief before erupting into triumphant cheers. Hyunuk grasps a floating golden crown from the dark smoke. It is a mythic great artifact with locked abilities he never saw in his past life. Suddenly, the massive castle violently shudders, raining debris down on the terrified squad. The system warns that the ownerless domain is collapsing, leaving a bloodied Hyunuk frustrated that his farming is cut short. He orders everyone out, and the armored soldiers sprint frantically through the crumbling halls. They charge out of the exploding Gothic fortress, leaving a trail of defeated foes behind them. As the glowing red gate begins to seal shut, Hyunuk screams at his men to keep running. Outside in the ruined city, members of the Blue Flower Guild wait by the vortex. A man and woman debate the impossible level limits required to breach the anomaly. Suddenly, the swirling portal flashes brightly and begins to shrink, shocking the waiting guards. A violent shockwave flings the guards aside as Hyunuk and his squad blast out of the closing rift. The guild leaders stare in pure shock as the battered AMT soldiers land safely, weeping and embracing each other. Standing victorious in the rain, Hyunuk proudly announces that they have conquered the Red Gate. A dark, knowing smile spreads across his bloodied face. The AMT squad erupts into triumphant cheers. They raise their fists, celebrating their impossible survival. A short distance away, two figures watch the celebration. The Blue Flower Guild leaders grind their teeth in utter disbelief. The woman glares fiercely at the celebrating soldiers. Meanwhile, back inside the collapsing Red Gate, a hooded figure stumbles forward. A blonde survivor sprints frantically through the desolate wasteland. He looks around in a total panic, unable to find the exit. Suddenly, he flinches at the sight of a bleeding man slumped against a wall. The injured man glares back with glowing red eyes and elongated fangs. The blonde man cautiously steps closer. The injured figure weakly begs him not to leave. Completely relieved, the survivor asks if a rescue team has finally arrived. He frantically looks around for the original entrance. Suddenly, a violent burst of energy erupts from the ground. The vampire screams out in agonizing hunger, demanding fresh blood. The blonde survivor trembles violently in terror. The bleeding creature stands tall over his freshly fallen victims. He remembers Hyunuk's crackling blue energy and menacing smile. Driven mad by rage, the vampire vows to drown the soldier in blood. Without warning, a massive red blast violently throws the remaining survivors backward. A glowing spear streaks past the collapsing portal. Outside in the rain, the AMT soldiers joyfully embrace each other. The raid squad stands proudly in the dark urban street. Their commander shouts that everyone has officially cleared the mission. The armed men roar in sheer victory. From their vantage point, the guild leaders look down in disgust. They cannot accept that mere support troops survived the disaster. A subordinate nervously tries to get the angry woman's attention. The commander barks an order for the squad to form 2 rows. The soldiers immediately fall into a disciplined formation. Nearby, a distressed woman desperately asks what happened to the Blue Flower Guild. Hyuna calmly replies that by the time they entered, her guild was already lost. The manager asks if he cleared the raid alone, which he resolutely confirms. Shocked, she questions his F-rank status, and he asks if she finally believes his strength. Stalling, she claims they must wait for the gate analysis, then asks about a rare spear. Hyunuk flinches, remembering the chaos of the collapsing castle. He recalls using his secret engraving skill to hide the glowing blue spear in a subspace. Back in the present, he flatly denies seeing any such weapon. The manager angrily accuses him of changing the subject to avoid paying up on their bet. Hyunuk asks if the Great Soul Strategy Manager is trying to back out of their agreement. Under his intense, bloody glare, she trembles with sheer frustration. He tells her he will collect his winnings later, but she desperately shouts an offer. She grabs his arm with promises of wealth, though Hyunuk knows she only wants to exploit him. Suddenly, a glowing magical circle announces the arrival of the 3rd Port Horse Brigade commander. The military officer appears on the street with a booming laugh. He steps forward asking if the guild is poaching personnel who haven't finished their military service. The manager nervously calls it a suggestion, but the commander coldly questions her illegal solo raid. As she stammers, he notes that her guild has crossed far too many lines here. He vows to file a formal complaint with the guildmaster and alert every other guild. Completely defeated, the Blue Flower leaders stand trembling in the rain, blood dripping from clenched fists. Inside, the commander laughs heartily, thrilled to hear about Hyunuk's flawless solo raid. Pleased to have struck a blow against the guild, Hyunuk listens as the older man marvels at his skill. He humbly credits his squad's teamwork, prompting the commander to offer everyone a promotion. Recognizing the old man's devious game, Hyunuk loudly shouts his deep gratitude. The commander flinches, then asks what he wants for himself, and Hyunuk requests holy weapons for his entire squad. The old officer looks completely bewildered, demanding to know why they need holy weapons when the zombie gate is already closed. Soon, news of the support squad's impossible victory and Hyunuk's scouting offer spreads across the base. Jealous soldiers grit their teeth, wondering if he will challenge Sergeant Choi for the title of ace. Outside, the squad rests at a picnic table, struggling with the sudden pressure of everyone's attention. However, Private Park fully embraces the spotlight, excitedly boasting to the others about blocking the Zombie King. When asked how they grew so strong, he happily credits Hyunuk's special training. Back in the barracks, Hyunuk casually eats a bagel while admiring his newly acquired golden crown. A sudden arrival interrupts his meal, and he hastily hides the crown as a soldier enters. The man immediately drops to his knees, desperately begging forgiveness for his past disrespect. Hyunuk quietly wonders why this brat had to show up right now, continuing to chew his food. The soldier eagerly shouts that he wants to learn from him, leaving Hyunuk staring in exasperation. Hyunuk observes a glowing interface confirming his progress. Elsewhere, a monstrous presence declares that the impending soul wave will slaughter the army. Knowing every extra fighter means more lives saved, Hyunuk steps forward and accepts. The eager soldier is stunned by the sudden agreement, but Hyunuk warns him. He grabs Corporal Lee by the collar, brutally dragging the screaming man across the floor. Meanwhile, under a blood-red sky, the mutated vampire survivor stands heavily injured and bleeding. A massive bald man radiating a furious red aura steps forward, berating the survivor. As the vampire flinches, the man coldly states they meant to leave him to die. However, they have been summoned, and a maniacal blonde woman vows to drown soul in blood. The devastating soul wave is finally beginning. In a glowing high-rise, a man coldly reports that the candidate at Seoul Station failed. Speaking to his superior, Taeyazon Guildmaster Baekjun Ki confirms they must secure a vital key. Walking straight up the building's exterior, he vows to track the missing artifact. He examines a photo, deducing the fire-wielding thief must belong to the AMT. Baekjun plans to open 4 simultaneous gates and unleash hounds to annihilate the 1st Battalion. He laughs warmly, assuring the chairman the Korea will fall exactly as planned. Hanging up the call, he casually crushes the device in his bare hand. The shattered pieces clatter to the floor as he steps toward the window overlooking the city. Below him, the ground is completely slick with the blood of dozens of fallen figures. He calls out to the surviving monsters in the shadows, announcing that they have fresh prey. A female vampire stands over a bleeding man, eagerly awaiting her master's command. The floating elder orders all slaughterers to invade the Namsan 1st AMT Battalion and kill everything that breathes. A horned girl with red eyes asks if their methods matter, while 4 men in suits wipe blood from their mouths. Shrouded in red smoke, she smiles as she leaves the final decision up to him. The next morning, Corporal Lee and 6 others salute as an officer congratulates them on their special promotions. The scarred battalion commander Gangsok launches into a long, rambling speech about proper army culture. Hyunuk watches with intense blue eyes, silently groaning as the commander continues praising their military spirit. Suddenly, a phone rings, and a soldier nearby answers before loudly repeating the name Kaito in shock. Gangsok immediately orders the platoon leader to wrap up the ceremony and hurries away, leaving Hyunuk deeply concerned. Hyunuk remembers Okita Kaito, the hooded sword saint assassin who murdered Korea's 4th-ranked swordsman. In his previous life, news of Kaito smuggling into Busan Harbor caused a massive panic. He recalls how Commander Gangsok abandoned the base to chase the assassin down. With the commander gone, the 1st AMT battalion was completely wiped out. Hyunuk watches closely as Minte, Sangmo, and several other soldiers are officially promoted to rank D. As the men cheer, he silently wonders if the future will unfold exactly as he remembers. Asked if he is disappointed, Corporal Park happily boasts about receiving a high-grade weapon instead. He opens his briefcases, leaving his comrades completely confused when they find only cylindrical stakes inside. Hyunuk telekinetically lifts the glowing stakes, vowing to brutally smash whatever threatens their survival. A few days later at the Namsan guard post, an exhausted soldier looks for Sergeant Lee. On the dark watchtower, Hyunuk listens to complaints about endless night shifts and realizes his preparations failed. He glares intensely, prompting the nervous soldier to babble about visiting his lonely grandmother. Hyunuk knows the massacre begins today, so he asks Junmo if he trusts him. As a wild cat hisses in the dark jungle, Hyunuk clicks his rifle with a cold smile. He cheerfully announces they are abandoning their post, leaving the terrified Junmo experiencing a dreadful déjà vu. Elsewhere, a pink-haired officer checks on the newly promoted Minte and Sangmo at their guard post, just outside their perimeter. A strange cat prowls through the dark grass. The exhausted guards complain that Sergeant Lee is forcing them to treat this night shift as training. The pink-haired officer smiles warmly, assuring them that Hyunuk pushes them because he knows their potential. Flustered by the praise, a guard vows to do his best, but suddenly spots an approaching figure. He raises his rifle, shouting the daily password and warning the stranger to freeze. A towering silhouette with glowing red eyes ignores the command, forcing the terrified soldier to yell again. Instead, a blood-soaked monster with glowing purple eyes shrieks and charges, taking a bullet to the neck. The creature drops dead onto the pavement, leaving the soldier gasping for breath behind his weapon. Before he can relax, a massive rumble shakes the rainy street, startling the entire unit. The guards freeze in absolute horror as the vibrations grow louder. A pack of flayed, muscular monsters with glowing eyes tears down the road at horrifying speed. As a suited figure coordinates the assault, the panicked soldiers scream to open fire. Muzzle flashes light up the dark passage as the guards desperately unleash a hail of bullets. The leading zombies are shredded by the heavy gunfire, collapsing into a bloody heap. Realizing they are overrun, a soldier provides covering fire and orders Sangmo to deploy a magic shield. The two men force the heavy metal doors shut just as monstrous beasts emerge from the trees. Bodies slam violently against the barrier, revealing an endless, terrifying swarm of undead gathering in the rain. High above the chaos, Hyunuk and Junmo rush through the dark forest toward the besieged settlement. Realizing the hellish soul wave has finally begun, Hyunuk lunges furiously into the night. Elsewhere, in the dimly lit officer's lounge, a red-haired woman works quietly on her laptop. Suddenly, an eerie sensation washes over her, prompting her to peek cautiously into the dark hallway. She raises a glowing object to pierce the darkness. Instead of an empty corridor, she discovers massive, glowing-eyed snakes brutally constricting several helpless victims. Horrified, she barely has time to react before a sudden crash showers the room in debris. Her hand glows with golden energy as she violently leaps out of the way. The pink-haired officer spots her, immediately exclaiming that she found her target. Outside, two suited men violently clash while rappelling down the glass facade of the building. The red-haired woman shatters the window, delivering a brutal kick to one of the men's faces. She hangs upside down amidst the falling glass, watching her target plummet. The suited man violently skids across the misty ground below, desperately gripping his ropes. The pink-haired officer steps into the mist, demanding to know if the whip-wielding man is a player. She notices a glowing bloody handprint burned into his shoulder. She realizes her holy power caused the burn and wonders who is healing him. The fanged man coldly dismisses her question, grinning as he declares it a waste to kill someone so pretty. He lashes his whip, forcing the officer to look up in sheer terror. Beneath a floating purple orb, an endless army of skeletal warriors marches steadily through the night. Watching the massive horde from a ledge, the red-haired woman realizes a gate has opened. She stares in absolute shock at the impossible number of monsters flooding into the city. The red-haired woman angrily demands the whip-wielding man's attention, but as she dashes forward, dark tendrils suddenly ensnare her. She violently stumbles as the suited man drags her by his whip, choking her while she desperately wishes she had her full equipment. The fanged player coldly declares he has no time to play and moves in for the kill. While she struggles to keep her slipping consciousness awake, he swings his weapon for a lethal strike, but a sudden barrage of energy blasts explodes across the pavement, forcing him back in furious confusion. The red-haired woman collapses to the wet ground in a coughing fit, looking up in sheer disbelief as a soldier steps in front of her. Sergeant Hyunuk Lee calmly announces that he came to rescue her. This leaves the red-haired woman utterly stunned. Annoyed at being ignored, the fanged man sneers at the military weakling. But Hyunuk simply smirks and asks if the monster plans to run away this time. Staring at the soldier's face, the whip-wielding man suddenly recognizes him and screams in absolute, murderous fury. Meanwhile, back at the breached gate, heavily armed soldiers desperately hold the line against a massive, screaming horde of mutated humanoids. Monstrous arms rip two guards into the ceiling, forcing the pink-haired officer to rapidly cast a glowing mana replenishment spell for the survivors. She begs them to hold on as the exhausted soldiers scream in pain, their barricade creaking under the impossible weight of the undead army. Suddenly, the startled guards watch as the rapid deployment force charges down the street in a tight tactical formation. Heavy boots thud against the pavement as the reinforcements raise their shields and flashing magical sigils, answering the call to hold the bleeding city. The fiery magical circles of the rapid deployment force illuminate the sky above the horde. A purple-haired assassin suddenly realizes why the mutants have stopped advancing. She hangs upside down with bloody daggers, leaving the pink-haired officer staring at the massacred squad. He hangs upside down with bloody daggers, leaving the pink-haired officer staring at the massacred squad. The killer drops directly into the guard post, sending the remaining soldiers into a panic. Standing calmly in the rain, he asks the terrified men if they even saw him move. Standing calmly in the rain, she asks the terrified men if they even saw her move. The assassin's red eyes narrow as he mocks their absolute helplessness. Her red eyes narrow as she mocks their absolute helplessness. She raises her curved knives, utterly bored by how weak her prey turned out to be. The assassin stares in confusion as the violent creatures lunge at the lone soldier. A mutant's stray attack shatters Hyunuk's bottle, sending him into an immediate furious rage. He screams over his ruined drink, glaring through his sunglasses at the terrified monsters. The mutants freeze in dumbfounded shock just before Hyunuk unleashes a brutal barrage of slashes. He lunges forward with a glowing green blade, butchering the creatures while the assassin watches, standing over the shredded corpses. Hyunuk demands to know if the assassin will pay for his drink. Amused by the soldier's speed, the killer smiles sinisterly and invites him to play. Hyunuk instantly vanishes and reappears right in front of him, flatly refusing the game. He drives a brutal strike into the assassin's face, demanding his money. The purple-haired killer violently counters with a glowing red blade, drawing fresh blood. The two deadly fighters clash on the rooftop as the rain continues to pour. Down below, two soldiers wait by the road barriers in the pouring rain. They excitedly announce the long-awaited arrival of Sergeant Young Jun. The young sergeant hiccups drunkenly, holding a glowing green bottle and demanding his drink. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, the purple-haired assassin takes a brutal hit, wooden stakes piercing her face. Her opponent is enveloped in a bright pink aura, pressing the assault. She recoils in shock as a glowing red blade slashes toward her. Hyunuk wields a bloody, curved karambit, ready for the next strike. The assassin roars in frustration, pointing down at the guard post below. The soldiers crouch behind their barriers, watching the distant figure. They cheer again as Sergeant Young Jun finally steps into view. The drunk sergeant hiccups, holding up his glowing green object in the rain. The assassin looks back, shocked to recognize Young Jun, who was supposed to be deployed elsewhere. Young Jun drunkenly explains he was ordered back, demanding to know what she will do about his ruined drink. Furious, the assassin curses at him. The green bottle shatters into pieces with a loud clang. The assassin lunges, unleashing a massive wave of purple energy. The blast sends the soldiers flying backward into the dark. Hyunuk raises his glowing weapon, firing a beam of light into the cloudy sky. Young Jun takes a heavy blow to the face. The assassin lunges forward again, a bloody short sword in hand. Suddenly, Hyunuk lands forcefully between the soldiers, tracking the assassin's impossible speed. The vampire glares at them from the dark forest, her eyes glowing red. Young Jun holds his head, groaning that this fight is going to sober him up completely. He asks to borrow a bayonet, swiftly catching a thrown knife midair. The soldiers warn him that a regular blade won't work, realizing she is no ordinary target. Young Jun looks surprised, realizing she isn't just a talking zombie. The assassin draws a curved dagger, her face wriggling as her fangs elongate. Furious that Young Jun is considered a swordmaster candidate, she transforms completely. Vowing to strike at top speed, she vanishes, leaving the pink-haired officer looking up in alarm. She leaps high above the guard post, leaving the officer staring up in absolute shock. The assassin drops from the sky in a blur of motion, plunging straight toward the soldiers below. She streaks past the guards, throwing two deadly blades that barely miss Sergeant Young Jun's face. The vampire furiously clashes her weapon against his, leaving the pink-haired officer staring in absolute terror. As the assassin brutally drives her blades toward the sergeant, the guard commander screams a desperate warning. The other soldiers charge forward to help, but the vampire violently slams one into a brick wall. Young Jun effortlessly deflects a massive strike with dark energy, just as a clawed hand bursts through the masonry. The sheer shockwave forces the soldiers to brace themselves, while the pink-haired officer shields her face. The impact leaves a crater in the cracked earth, revealing a bloody aftermath to the stunned guards. Coughing up a mouthful of blood, the vampire glares at Young Jun, who curses loudly in the dark. The sergeant complains that he was deliberately holding back, but the brutal attack has completely sobered him up. The assassin flinches as Young Jun raises his glowing dagger, demanding compensation for his ruined drink. Realizing her opponent is impossibly strong, the vampire panics as the newly sobered Young Jun prepares to question her. She immediately dives away, silently vowing to regroup with the other slaughterers. In a desperate bid to escape, she lunges wildly at the sergeant only to be suddenly intercepted. Hyunuk flashes into the fray, delivering a devastating slash before viciously kicking the assassin back. The vampire stumbles over the scattered corpses and crashes violently into the ground. Young Jun simply adjusts his glasses, watching the brutal takedown with mild curiosity. The street is littered with corpses and caged monsters. The purple-haired assassin kneels in the pouring rain, completely defeated. Hyunuk demands to know why she is leading zombies. When she only bares her fangs, he violently kicks her to the ground. She hits the ground hard, unable to put up a fight. After ordering a soldier to tie the assassin up, Hyunuk reports to the pink-haired officer. Meanwhile, a soldier offers Young Jun a glowing holy sword. Staring into the night sky, Young Jun coldly refuses. The soldier warns that a regular bayonet will not kill the monsters easily. Young Jun flashes a maniacal grin, declaring that dying the hard way is far more painful. He leaps over the fence and plunges into the horde. He furiously dismembers the creatures, tearing through them with terrifying speed. Watching the slaughter, the other soldiers tremble at their sergeant's brutal new personality. Elsewhere, Hyunuk corners another vampire, casually asking if the weakling plans to run again. The vampire recognizes him instantly and screams in pure furious rage. He lashes out with a dark whip, dragging Hyunuk into a desperate mid-air clash. With skeletons swarming the base, Hyunuk warns Yuna that fighting a vampire without holy power is suicide. He shouts that he cannot protect her while fighting at this level. Yuna grits her teeth in the rain as he deflects another massive blow. Watching him fight, she finally realizes just how impressive his combat achievements truly are. She strictly orders him not to die, and he dashes straight back into the chaotic aerial barrage. The vampire sneers, asking if Hyunuk really thinks he can win alone while letting Yuna escape. Hyunuk just smiles mischievously through the rain. cheerfully expressing his relief that the fanatic is still alive. He smugly guesses that the vampire survived his last failure by passing it off as a simple mistake. The vampire's eyes glow with murderous rage, confirming Hyunuk's theory that his superiors know nothing about him. Hyunuk angrily admits he spent sleepless nights worrying about this loose end, prompting the furious vampire to snarl. The fanatic activates his new gear, his body erupting into a monstrous form of wriggling, spiky dark tendrils. As the vampire boasts that holy beads cannot stop him, Hyunuk stares greedily at the billion-dollar mana tanks. The vampire roars that he will tear the human apart without even being touched. In response, Hyunuk raises his own weapon as the vampire's dark, whip-like appendages thrash around him. Using the crown of light and darkness, Hyunuk channels a massive holy aura directly into his glowing sword. The vampire stares in absolute shock as Hyunuk brandishes the shining blade, asking whoever mentioned using beads. Grinning intensely, Hyunuk promises to tear the monster apart in a very holy way. The blinding light of the holy weapon illuminates the misty forest, radiating pure, lethal energy. The vampire trembles in disbelief, while Hyunuk's confident smile only grows wider as he wields the glowing blade. Desperate, the vampire bluffs that the holy power is too weak, but Hyunuk calmly asks if he is scared. Enraged by the taunt, the vampire violently swings his massive tendrils through the air to rip Hyunuk to shreds. Hyunuk plummets backward through the trees, narrowly dodging the crushing force of the dark whips as he falls. The vampire's whips lash out, and Hyunuk realizes their chaotic trajectory makes dodging incredibly dangerous. He finally understands the fanatic's confidence, plunging downward with his glowing sword to close the gap. He knows a whip's massive reach becomes useless up close, thrusting his radiant weapon toward the bloody fiend. However, the vampire merely grins as unexpected dark spikes burst outward, completely blocking Hyunuk's sudden strike. Hyunuk plummets through the dark forest, throwing his glowing dagger while ensnared by sharp steel wires. He chains his skills together, deflecting the relentless blades as a bright energy beam forces him backward. The crushing force sends both fighters hurtling downward in a chaotic swirl of debris and dark magic. The monster taunts him for retreating, and Hyunuk curses as hidden tentacles block his ranged combo. Knowing his final attack will fail, he catches himself in midair, dodging another massive barrage of whips. Deciding to risk a massive mana drain, Hyunuk activates the Achilles Spear, unleashing a blinding slash. As dark whips snap around him, Hyunuk realizes the fanatic is deliberately stalling to drain his magic completely. Hyunuk readies his glowing spear, realizing he cannot waste all his mana on this stalling tactic. The fanatic grins, crushing Hyunuk in a trap of radiating spikes. Instead of panicking, Hyunuk grips his radio and urgently shouts for Taeyong. The vampire looks up just as a blinding sniper round violently impales him. Miles away, Private Taeyong confirms the hit while Corporal Min-jae orders them to shift positions. The fanatic collapses to the ground, bleeding heavily from the massive spikes. Enraged by the ambush, he unleashes a desperate red beam and lunges forward. Hyunuk meets the charge head-on, screaming for the monster to die as he drives his spear forward. The holy weapon pierces straight through the vampire's armor with a massive impact. Pinned to the ground and trembling, the fanatic gasps that he is a chosen one. He demands to know his killer's rank, but Hyunuk simply rips a red gem from his chest. Staring down at the dying noble, Hyunuk coldly reveals that he is an F-class. The fanatic screams in absolute disbelief as Hyunuk channels his holy aura, engulfing the vampire in cleansing flames. Hyunuk splits the rank 3 mana tank, preparing to absorb its massive energy. Suddenly, a frantic radio transmission warns the guards that Barrack 2 is under attack. Outside, a massive horde of undead swarms the compound, leaving the terrified soldiers completely overwhelmed. A determined guard lunges into the fray, coming face to face with the glowing red eyes of a skeleton. Another soldier rams a vehicle straight through the undead ranks, vowing to crush the low-level monsters. However, the undead instantly swarm the wreckage, and the man screams in terror as blades pierce his flesh. The chaotic battlefield quickly turns into an absolute slaughter as the skeletons rip their victims apart. As a giant skeletal commander watches the advance, the surviving women inside realize their platoon leader is dead. Retreating through the darkened halls, they desperately hurl fire magic to hold the encroaching horde back. Panic spreads through the dormitory as the terrifying invaders begin forcing their way inside. The survivors frantically try to access the armory, only to discover the dead platoon leader holds the keys. A woman in a green dress begs them not to give up, just as a skeletal arm shatters the window. Outside, a desperate soldier sprints through the pouring rain, terrified of losing the one person he loves. But inside the breached dormitory, an undead warrior already raises its heavy sword over the trembling Se-Wei Kim. A desperate shout rings out as Se-Wei Kim stares up in shock at the descending blade. Outside, the massive skeletal horde continues its relentless march across the dark battlefield. Overlooking the slaughter, a bald, bearded man named Kangmok suggests they just attack all at once. A horned vampire named Carol mocks his nasty hobby, but Kangmok cruelly notes that humans are adorable when their hopes are crushed. Suddenly, a cloaked scout arrives to report that both of their infiltrators are dead. The scout explains that after using mana scattering to destroy the base's communications, the backup forces never arrived. Kangmok wonders if Yuna, the daughter of the Holy Knight Commander, is simply stronger than they expected. Carol coldly orders Kang Mok to go down there himself and wipe out the army command center. Gritting his teeth in annoyance, Kang Mok violently slams a massive totem into the ground. A glowing purple portal instantly rips open in the dark forest. The area is declared an assembly point of the evil, doubling the monster spawn rate and boosting undead recovery. Kang Mok declares he will crush the soldiers, while 3 massive armored monsters stomp forward to handle Yuna. Carol smiles menacingly, wondering what Yuna's face will look like when she finally falls into despair. Meanwhile, a camouflaged soldier sprints desperately through the rainy forest toward the besieged compound. Hyunuk blasts his way forward, unable to remember if that dead fanatic was one of the 2 vampires from his past life. Seeing the massive skeleton army assault the compound, he realizes the defenseless dormitory is completely vulnerable. He silently vows that he cannot afford to lose Sehwai-kem. He desperately dashes past the hooded vanguard. Encountering a wall of armored skeletal warriors, he violently shatters them with glowing blue projectiles. He weaves through the chaos as the vast undead horde swarms the urban streets. Terrified of arriving too late, Hyunuk pushes himself harder. Screaming, he unleashes a devastating wave of blue flames and crashes onto the overrun building. Inside the dormitory, a towering skeleton raises its heavy sword behind the terrified Siwei. She squeezes her eyes shut as the sharp blade descends. Suddenly, glowing green tendrils pull her back, and a massive spectral figure manifests to block the strike. The captured purple-haired assassin glares at the undead, angrily asking who permitted them to enter the women's barracks completely naked. A powerful force violently launches the skeleton upward through the shattered ceiling. Hyunuk watches the armored monster fly past him as he finally breaches the room. Panting heavily, he urgently asks if everyone is okay, announcing that he has arrived to rescue them. Surrounded by crushed skeletons, the assassin dryly watches the exhausted soldier and wonders who exactly is rescuing whom. Swirling green energy beneath the assassin's feet proves she is far stronger than expected. Seiwei simply crosses her arms, annoyed that Hyunuk is trying to act cool. In his past life, this elementalist made history by assassinating the Orc King in a brutal deathmatch. That dark, monstrous history is exactly why he could never work with her before his regression. The terrified women finally recognize Hyunuk through the gloom as he catches his breath. He immediately asks who is in command, and Seiwei calmly steps forward to take charge. As another soldier announces the armory is open, Hyunuk orders everyone to grab weapons while he holds the line. He warns them to hurry, knowing his mana reserves cannot hold back the horde forever. Out in the rain, the skeletal army multiplies just as Junmo's frantic voice crackles over the radio. The corporal reports that Barrack 1 is fully armed and successfully evacuating. Hyunuk smiles in relief, praising Junmo for securing the first building. Suddenly, a bright flash illuminates the advancing undead, and Hyunuk looks up in shock. A dark figure streaks across the sky, blasting the skeletons into burning debris. He watches as the red-haired B-rank Black Paladin, Yuna Seo, descends from the clouds. Yuna lands gracefully, surprised to find this F-class soldier in the thick of the chaos again. When she asks if the vampire is dead, Hyunuk salutes and reports that Barrack 2 is also secure. Yuna stares at him, stunned that he managed to coordinate both evacuations entirely on his own. She wonders how a mere grunt has the entire tactical situation perfectly figured out. A monstrous roar suddenly shakes the compound as an empowered wave of skeletons charges forward. Yunha and Soi stare in absolute horror, realizing the undead have planted a dark totem. A blue-haired man spots the Devil's Medallion totem, eager to claim the valuable item for himself. Meanwhile, Yuna realizes the undead assault is a highly organized terror attack. She immediately orders all surviving personnel to arm themselves and hold defensive positions. Yunha commands Hyunuk to follow her to the underground command room, leaving Junmo stunned. Deep in the bunker, violent impacts rattle the control room doors and glitch the security monitors. 2 defending soldiers realize the attackers shattering their double magical barriers must be incredibly powerful. The gray-haired berserker Wonsak desperately orders his comrade to blast him out alongside the intruder. Knowing they stand no chance in close quarters, Wonsok resolves to sacrifice himself as the doors explode. A massive bearded man in a suit steps through the wreckage, mocking their desperate barricades. Wonsok stares in absolute horror, overwhelmed by the giant intruder's sheer monstrous size. Furious at the resistance, the bearded giant unleashes a terrifying red aura, prompting Wonsok to swing wildly. Terrified but refusing to back down, the berserker makes a desperate dash toward his towering opponent. Facing certain death, Wonsok remembers his brutal training with Hyunuk, who aggressively orders him to control his mana instead of recklessly exploding it. Hyunuk explains that losing control is exactly why the berserker mode wears off so quickly. Exhausted and slumped on the ground, the large man takes the scolding. He asks Hyunuk what he should do if he ever faces a monster completely out of his league. Hyunuk immediately teases him for being timid, joking that he should just run away. But after a swift punch to the face, Hyunuk gives him a serious command. He orders Wonsuk to stand his ground and protect his comrades like a true soldier. Snapping back to the present, the gray-haired berserker swings his staff with everything he has. The massive bearded intruder flares with a menacing red aura, mocking the man's attempt to fight. But Wonsuk knows he cannot win a direct clash. As a skeletal horror attacks, Wonsuk desperately lunges past it toward the giant. Nearby, Lieutenant Minhui Lee, a C-class warp mage, violently grips a glowing device and screams the signal. A glowing magical circle instantly engulfs Wonsook and the massive intruder as they grapple. The warp activates, sending both figures plummeting down a dark, rainy shaft. They crash into a misty underground corridor where the bearded monster simply flashes a menacing, fanged grin. A powerful shockwave suddenly sweeps through the dark space. Relishing the wider space, the bearded intruder laughs and mocks his opponent's desperate stance. Pushing his mana control to its absolute limit, Wonsook forces his body into a second level of berserker strengthening and swings his axe. Remembering Hyunuk's training, the gray-haired berserker dashes forward and drives a brutal downward kick into the monster. He follows up with a massive strike, silently vowing to protect his comrades at all costs. Meanwhile, back in the bunker corridors, Hyunuk and Yuna rush through a barrage of glowing attacks. They dodge a white blast of energy, only to freeze at a horrifying sight: the bearded intruder standing over a mangled body. Hyunuk's eyes widen in horror as he screams Wonsook's name. Hanging upside down and coughing up blood, Wonsook weakly tells his sergeant that he refused to run away. The intruder casually stomps on Wonsook's face, silencing the berserker as his bloodied leg goes limp. As Yuna furiously demands answers, Hyunuk calmly orders her to head to the command room and organize a strike team against the enemy totem. With his eyes glowing a murderous blue, he vows to kill the bastard himself, leaving the paladin completely shocked. The blood-soaked intruder recognizes Yuna as the commander's daughter, gloating that she saved him the hunt. Yuna agrees to retreat to the command room, but sternly orders Hyunyu not to die. Hyunuk suddenly dashes past the confused monster, admitting he never liked Wonsook's reliance on brute strength. As the intruder yells in confusion, Hyunuk remembers how the berserker risked his life for him. He furiously vows to risk his own life to get revenge and honor his fallen ally. Absorbing a mana tank to push his limits, Hyunuk violently dashes down the dark corridor. The bearded monster looks bewildered before calling him a lunatic and roaring for a fight. Hyunuk drops through the vertical shaft, skidding onto the lower floor. The intruder points, only to be blinded by a flash and stabbed by glowing blue projectiles. The monster falls through the shaft, parrying the blue energy with his bloody, clawed hand. Activating his glowing spear, Hyunuk unleashes a powerful slash. He drives his iron stake forward, sending a shocking burst of blue energy into the creature. They clash in a high-speed blur, but the monstrous intruder demands if this is his limit. The monster scatters the attack, mocking Hyunuk's vow as he desperately blocks with his steel physique. The heavy blow sends Hyunuk falling rapidly down the cracked shaft, hitting the ground hard. He skids to a halt, his eyes burning with intense frustration. Clicking his tongue in annoyance, Hyunuk realizes he has landed right next to Wonsook's bloodied body. Suddenly, the roaring monster lunges through the rain to finish him off. Hyunuk dashes to evade, but a massive impact violently slams him backward across the concrete. He looks up in absolute shock as the dark monster swoops down for the kill. The massive beast mocks Hyunuk, relentlessly smashing the concrete around him. As Hyunuk plummets through the collapsing structure, the monster dashes forward and grabs him. However, Hyunuk instantly activates his indomitable steel physique. The sudden counterattack brutally crushes the creature into the shattered ground. Hyunuk grimaces in agony, his hands burning with volatile mana. Smashing through the rubble, Kangmak, the Unbreakable, scoffs at Hyunuk's pathetic revenge. Suddenly, a strange humming sound fills the dark ruins, confusing the monster. Floating amidst a massive surge of blue energy, Hyunuk reveals they are inside a military armory. The dark creature stares in absolute shock. Drawing completely upon the rank 3 mana tank, Hyunuk feels the energy tearing his chest apart. Bleeding from his mouth, he defiantly vows to see who breaks first.